OTB AM.
With Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating bar.
All right, 7:30 this Tuesday morning. You're very welcome along to OTB AM. It's Ger, Eoin and Colin with you. Colin, good morning to you. How are you? Welcome back.
Morning, lads. Thank you.
How are you doing?
All good.
What was your weekend like? It's a day late, but how are you?
Very good. Did a bit of a tour of the country on behalf of Off the Ball. Went to Carlow at the end of last week, and over the weekend I watched both finals on Saturday in Galway and went to an establishment recommended by your own Nathan Murphy, who gives good recommendations.
There were 4 finals on Saturday, of course, Colin. So which two
Well, I
did you
wonder
watch?
what people, which two do people think I'm talking about? But I went to 2 of the finals to see on TV over the weekend. Great atmosphere, actually. First time I've watched a huge sporting event in a packed pub since COVID, and you forget how much more it adds to games.
Colin walked in,
sitting down and watching at home.
Colin walked in this morning a little bit croaky, and I was like, "Oh, you still hungover from the weekend?" He goes, "Oh no, I think I might have caught something. I've had to do a couple of tests." So first time you've been in a large gathering of people, and immediately afterwards you're coming out going, "I think I got COVID."
I told you that in confidence.
Oh,
first
sorry.
of all.
I'm
And
revealing.
secondly,
I'm breaching.
He's not got COVID, he's got monkeypox.
Secondly, I did several tests, but yeah, I'm croaky enough, all right. But not because of your theory, you know, just actually unwell would be my theory.
Unconnected to the large
Totally unconnected.
gathering of people.
That was so long ago now.
Not the drinking. I was blaming the drinking. That's the other part of that. That if everybody's wondering, what are they talking about? That's what I'm talking about.
No.
You just get basically, you reach a certain point in the middle of your life where you can no longer do the things that you used to do, and you take it for granted that you could no longer do them, and you try it again, and then you're dead for a week.
I find it's actually the physical fatigue of the afternoon after and not the morning after. It's very specific that I wouldn't have necessarily suffered from 5 years ago in your pamp, which you are now, which you don't get.
That. I'm past that point.
You're at a great point right now.
No,
you don't even realise it.
Same age as all those dead musicians. It's perfect.
That's it. Well, I've only got a month or 2 to go, and then I'm clear.
Of the 27 club?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought you were 28. Oh.
Sorry, you were making the point there that I actually disagree with wholeheartedly about that. It's better to watch a big game in a crowded pub.
Yeah, well, like I generally don't like watching, say, a Manchester United match in a pub because I can't watch it properly, because, you know, you're talking to people. So it's very difficult to actually focus on the game properly. But in a game like that, where I didn't really care who won between Liverpool and Real Madrid, you know, wanted, you know, Ronan O'Gara to win, preferably. But you're mostly talking amongst yourselves and you're watching, and it's almost part of your group. But if I want to really focus on a match, I'll watch it at home. Is that what you're getting at?
Yeah, fair.
But the atmosphere is better.
It's incredible, yeah. And I completely forgot about it. I know it doesn't compare to actually going to the event like you did on Saturday there. But just to have like a huge group around you to watch a match, it's different, because for 2 years it's been watching it at home, and you do get to analyse the match more, but you kind of take it for granted a bit.
You also have, like, you're either being distracted by other people or you're being distracted by scrolling through your phone at home. So I guess it's better to be distracted by other people.
I keep my phone on the other side of the room these days when watching any game that I want to concentrate on. It's the only way to do it. Then at halftime, go on Twitter if you want, to form your opinions based on others, and then go back to resuming the match.
Nice. Don't contact Colin during a game.
You'll just get blanked. One of the things that we kind of didn't think properly through in Paris at the weekend was the fact that Roland Garros was on, and you could definitely have gone. There's loads of empty seats. That's one thing that is noticeable from any of the TV coverage. Now, maybe they're just the good seats that you can see that are courtside, and they're just corporate seats, and that's why they're empty, is because, you know, the French corporates are like, nah, come back to me today, for example. I suspect there won't be any empty seats tonight, because Nadal and Djokovic are playing tonight in the French Open. So if you've nothing else to do this evening, and let's face it, there's nothing else on in the world.
Yeah, I think tennis has its time tonight. I think this is it for tennis. It's great to have it. It's great to have a night to ourselves. But it's a pity that these two are playing each other so early in quarterfinals. Rafael Nadal against Novak Djokovic, a repeat of last year's epic semi-final, which is actually the first time they've played since then. That was the same night that Euro 2020 started, Italy against Turkey. And I remember that Twitter had split its loyalties that night, and I think a lot of people were watching the tennis because it was such a brilliant match, which only went to 4 sets, but it's still an all-time classic. And then the year before, of course, Nadal beat Djokovic in the final in the 2020 competition, which was actually played in autumn because of COVID. So, you know, cherish these moments, because there's not going to be many left, both in the 30s now. I would say the winner of this match should win the competition. There's probably a Carlos Alcaraz-shaped body on the other side of that draw, or on their side of the draw, that could actually win it in the semi-final, but I would say the winner of Djokovic and Nadal is going to win the whole thing, and I can't see Djokovic losing this match.
Right, and so overnight though, a new kid, a new wunderkind.
Yeah, Rune has come through. Holger Rune, a 19-year-old from Denmark. He pretty easily beat Stefanos Tsitsipas in 4 sets. Tsitsipas is last year's finalist, one of the best clay players in the world, but Rune really dispatched him with incredible ground strokes. There he is on screen. He's looks every bit as 19. He's quite baby-faced. His forehand and backhand yesterday just dismantled Tsitsipas's game, and Tsitsipas wasn't too happy afterwards, said in his post-match press conference that he first of all praised Rune's solid backhand, praised his mentality, and then took a big gap to say, he's a grinder, which is quite disparaging at that level of the game. So, he's all graft, whereas Rune would consider himself one of the most talented players on tour. And I was saying to you, Ger, before we came on air, that this guy is not short in confidence for a 19-year-old who, on paper, actually hasn't done anything in the game yet. For instance, this is his first ever French Open, but he has all the self-belief in the world, which is really what you need when you go to Philippe Chatrier to play against one of the best players in the world, last year's runner-up. And Rune, if you would just to turn on the game yesterday and weren't following tennis for a while and didn't know who was where, you would consider Rune as easily the better player than Tsitsipas, which isn't necessarily the case. And that's how well Rune played yesterday. And it's an exciting time for men's tennis because at the same time you have the other 19-year-old superstar in Carlos Alcaraz. So, the future of the game is in good hands, provided these two guys stay fit and healthy and well throughout their career. I always felt with the 4 in Zverev, Medvedev team and Tsitsipas, that while they were great players, they weren't quite
good
world
players.
class.
They were good
like
players.
Nadal, Djokovic.
Yeah. Not great, not great
Andy
player.
Murray,
Not a great player.
Roger Federer. But these two guys coming through are showing real early signs of being absolutely exceptional.
What about Casper Ruud? He is seeded, obviously, so
he's seeded.
You know a lot more about him, but we got the Scandinavian derby.
Yeah,
tomorrow, is it, or
derby.
today?
It's Norway against Denmark, so they're providing history there. It's been a long time since either nation. I think it's the first time that Norway have had a French Open quarter-finalist, and it's the first time since 1925, I think, that Denmark have had last day player at the French Open. Ruud is one of those players who's kind of perennial last 16, last 8 player. He's been around for a while, but is very good, and has the more established game and really should be beating Rune. But then he beat Hubert Hurkacz in the last round, Ruud, which wasn't a massive shock. I mean, he did break Hurkacz, who had, up to that point, not lost his serve, so that was very impressive. And he's a really, really good player. But is he a great player in the, Dunphy Giles side of things? I'm not sure, but he's good.
We'll see. It's too early. I mean, but those 4 you've talked about are not great players. When we're talking about the great players, we're talking about the trilogy that we've had. Are you getting bored of them? It sounds a little bit like you're ready for the next thing in your life.
No.
A little bit of strange is what you're after here.
No. I just said we should cherish Djokovic and Nadal.
Yeah, but you cherish things that you don't really. You've had enough. I cherish your love.
It happens. It pretty much happens once a year now, and it's going to happen tonight. And all eyes are going to be on it. If you want to watch it, there'll be nothing else to distract you. Nothing. So it's right in front of you tonight. The only problem is, it does start so late. French Open started these night sessions in recent years, so it's 7:45 Irish time, 8:45 French time. And that's great, it's like a prime, as Eoin said, Champions League slot, he was saying before we went on air. And that's true, but the thing with Champions League matches is obviously when they're going to finish. With this could go into the wee hours of the morning, you might not be able to see the end of it. Whereas last night, Marin Cilic dismantled Daniil Medvedev, and he did it in straight sets. Medvedev only won 7 games, which was a real shock. And that ended at about just gone 10 o'clock. And you pretty much won't get this match ending any sooner than that. That's the best case scenario. If you want to go to bed at a reasonable time and be up first thing to talk about it, that's probably the best case scenario. But then, of course, if that happens, then we don't have much of a match. So it's a bit of a catch-22.
No, I just want Nadal to smash him. That's what I want.
This is going into the wee hours of the morning. And I understand it from a point of view of television viewers, but people do tune out as the game goes on because people have to go to bed at some point. And the other issue too is that since this tournament started last Sunday week, there's only been 1 women's night session. It's all men with the exception of 1. And women, I don't think I've been treated very well in the French Open for a long time. I mean, if you look at the order of play today, there's 4 quarterfinals on, 2 from each side, and the first 2 are women's. So they start this morning. So it's almost like a feeling, and they might not be doing this intentionally, but there's a feeling that, we'll get the women's out of the way so we can concentrate on the men's. Because it happens time and time again at the French Open, and they're particularly bad for it.
Okay. You watched all the Gaelic football the weekend, right?
Yes.
You weren't doing anything else. And
Well,
sorry, I should have asked you that off air before I come on air.
No. Sorry, I absolutely was doing other things while watching the football at the weekend. Yeah. Just sorry, like chatting to my mates.
Okay, Grant. Sorry. Anyway, you feel confident talking about the games at the weekend?
I feel confident talking about the games at the weekend, yes.
Because I listened to the first 10 minutes of the football pod on the way in this morning. That's all I had time for on the commute. And it was interesting that Paddy Andrews had watched the game back on the BBC, and so therefore was not like raining down all levels of shit on how crap the game was, which is the theme in the papers today and has been the theme all for the last 24 hours. It's like if the only thing you say about this game is anything other than football is dead, it's being ruined by these people, those ones up north, then you haven't commented on this game. You have not lived. You have not read the memo, which seems to have done the rounds in the Outlads WhatsApp group.
Yeah, I watched Extra Time on BBC and I watched Normal Time on RTE, and it was chalk and cheese, and obviously there was far more glowing on BBC. But even I watched the Sunday game, then only you got around to it yesterday, the night show, and they'd kind of reverted to the afternoon theme as well of this was bad. That was like the main thrust of the conversation with regards to what actually happened in that, and it was negative football.
So that's essentially the theme of Kevin McStay's piece today. Kevin McStay's pieces are generally full of loads of interesting stuff in them, but for this one it's the same theme because he was gone COCOM, and I like Roscommon's greatest team of all time, right, would have reached an All-Ireland final against Kerry. Do you know what the score was in that All-Ireland final?
Like 12-8.
1-8 to 1-6. Colm O'Rourke won back-to-back All-Irelands. Do you know what the score was when they beat Cork after a replay in the first game?
Yeah, nothing.
1-9 to 12 points. I think it was 13-11 in the second game, and they won by 6 points the previous year when I think they might have scored 1 goal and 13 points.
That's hilarious. Like
these are the custodians of all-time great top quality football that we're not allowed to know anything about other than it's shit. That's how the analysis is. This is so boring, we can't talk about it. No, stop talking about it, it's boring. You can't in any way extract anything from this other than moral superiority. We are morally superior to you because we are telling you that this is crap, or the game is dead. They're the two takeaways. I can sit in judgment on what you're allowed to enjoy and what you're not allowed to enjoy because I played in all these classic games. 12 to 15 points. Wow, that was an amazing game. If that had happened, sorry, I think it was 9 to 12 points. I was giving them too much credit. Or you can watch the BBC and find out what's going on.
Yeah, now to be fair, I do think in McStay's column this morning he is making the point that he's concerned about whether or not Derry can actually win an All-Ireland based on the style of play, which is different to the spectacle point.
That's like there's like 12 paragraphs of spectacle and then one, can they do this and will they be able to get away with it? I'm not sure. That's it's not like
my brain has only remembered the can they do this in Croke Park thing, because that's the interesting bit here. That's the bit where I think that it absolutely is fair game to chat about the style of play. Is this a winning style of play come Croke Park? For the spectacle, I mean, I would take drama over.
Can you tell me what the style of play is and who are the main purveyors of it? How it has evolved over the last 2 seasons, and what are they showing in terms of signs of progress? And what are the players who will be able to do this in Croke Park? Which ones specifically? Which aspect of this will they not be able to do, as opposed to the negative hand passing thing? They won't be able to do that in Croke Park, because that's all I saw.
That's the stuff you do want to glean from the analysis for sure, and the why you have that feeling that Derry won't be able to translate it to Croke Park. But
Betcha Marty Clark would have an opinion on it. That'd be well formed, multi-clause, couple of paragraphs in his head to go, I think this is what they need to do. This is what's going to happen. These are the players they have. This is the options they have off the bench. We've seen them do this before in big games. This is some of the stuff that during the league didn't work for them. They've changed this in the championship. It just feels like there's an alternative universe out there where it's not like I see the world in black and white. My style was good because we lumped the ball into the full forward line. No scores, bit of head pucking, a lot of wrestling and bad pitches. That was classic. They were the days, my friend. Versus the analysis that we're getting, and I don't think it's right.
You were exercised about this with Anthony Moyles yesterday. Were you? Is that correct? I think I heard you. My time off.
Ah, look at this. Humble brag.
This is passion from you.
Well, I'm like
2 days in a row now.
Well, it was the same from O'Rourke. It was the same from Spillane. I didn't see the Sunday game.
Spillane didn't figure. It was Gooch on Sunday night.
But that seems like it's the memo. Like,
or something.
Our house style has decided this is bad.
Yeah, or is it like from Gooch's perspective? Is that actually just something that's been hammered into him for a long time? You know, the enemy up in the north that play that style of football that's going to crush our hopes and dreams. I'm not sure what O'Rourke's learned experience is. It certainly would be different to Gooch's, you would have thought, given some of the finals that you said that he would have played in, and maybe even that Meath style of play. So it's a bit different. And
even that 4-game saga, like none of those games were classics of like
But here's the thing.
215 to 2.
Like, they kind of were classics, but they weren't classics in the sort of artistic way that we like to refer to as classics.
They were a bit like the Ulster final.
That's what I was just about to say. And I think, especially after what we got on Saturday, and I've obviously been completely tongue-in-cheek when I said to Colm that we had 4 finals on Saturday. We had 2 finals that mattered, 2 that didn't matter. And the 2 that didn't matter, you would take you would completely change the style of play that you saw on Saturday for the sake of a bit of drama, for the sake of a little bit of jeopardy. And I just mean a little bit of jeopardy, a little bit of uncertainty about where the results might go. And I think if you're going by, rankings or where these teams have come from as a power base, Donegal and Derry over the last couple of years, if they went out and played like, I don't know, Kerry and Dublin have been used to playing over the last couple of years, would they be in a position to have won an Ulster title this year? Maybe they would. Like, I've made this point before, the players are absolutely quality. So that maybe that's not a fair thing to say at all about Derry, but it's a winning style of football, and it's served up a whole heap of drama over the last few games, and they've won 3 massive games as a result of it. Like, it's I'm not sure. Is the expectation that Derry should feel ashamed or something about how what their approach to football is, or what's the good outcome here, or what would be the preferable outcome for those who hate what they saw on Sunday?
I don't know. Them getting hammered, all the teams from the north getting hammered by Dublin and Kerry.
Yeah,
which obviously
possibly.
Dublin and Kerry have to play. So a Dublin or /Kerry final against Galway would be the saviour of the game, I suspect.
Yeah, like I mean,
but we have to hammer Derry now because.
Yeah, like I presume that Galway Roscommon was more palatable than earlier in the day. Like, that could have been. It wouldn't have taken a whole pile of different things to happen for that to be a blowout. I don't think. Maybe that's unfair on Roscommon. Like, a couple of the goals they scored, like that last gasp Murta goal was pretty class. To be fair, and
it was effectively the last kick of the game, or close enough to it.
Yeah, basically, he was even shaking his head when he was celebrating. But and Roscommon have been known to play like a very attractive style of football over the last couple of years, and I don't know really. Like, I wasn't actually expecting there to be so much negativity around Derry at the weekend, because I thought that the whole storyline around Derry had kind of taken over.
Do you think that it's actually because there's nothing else to talk about, because the first 2 games, the alternative is to actually go after the GAA and say you have screwed up your own championships in larger, like in population terms, the vast majority of the country. Munster and Leinster are irrevocably broken, and we need to talk about this tonight. We need to talk about this today during these games. That large portion of the summer is a waste of time. But that takes a little bit of courage to do that.
Yeah, possibly. Like, I mean, that's also like unbelievably obvious, and maybe people feel that's been like a horse that's been flogged.
Today's the day. When it's happening in real time, you remind everybody we had a chance to fix this. And you're going to need a chance to fix it. And you need to go to your local club. You need to put a motion to your county board, and someone needs to stand up and be bored by this, and then go and try and fix it. Right. OTB AM brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. Hopefully Keith Wood will address the Leinster hubris, says Dave. Keith Wood coming up at 8:10. Rebecca Clancy talking Formula 1 at 8:30. Sports News at 8:45. Sports Pages at 8:55. Billy O'Loughlin, the Longford manager, is going to talk to us at 9:10. Pat Nevin's going to join us at 9:30. As a Munster fan, Colin, were you happy Leinster lost?
Yes, very happy. Just unmuted myself. Very happy. We were like the only ones in the pub in the back who celebrated the final whistle. It really goes to show. It had to be more Munster people based in Galway on Saturday night. But yeah, I was delighted, yeah. I mean, not so much that Leinster lost, more that Ronan O'Gara's La Rochelle won.
Everybody heard, yes, I was delighted Leinster lost. That's pretty much it.
And that's totally
Because
fine.
of who they played,
Yeah, I wasn't really sure. Like, I thought maybe like the fact that Leinster is Ireland sort of thing would have had me cheering for Leinster, and then as the game wore on and this thing looked like it was going to be possible, I was like, my heart is absolutely rooting for La Rochelle here.
I was absolutely delighted for him. Like, he's so young in coaching terms, but he's going to be one of the all-time greatest rugby contributor here. You know, this is ridiculous, and can't wait to come on the show again to talk about it, because it's remarkable. 2 finals in a row, and he's won it against one of the all-time great sides, and they deserve to win.
Yeah, Leinster not one of the all-time great sides because they haven't won a final since Bilbao. So as a result of that, you'd have to start taking away those brownie points. But look, the hubris. I mean, this is why we have the hubris. It's like the Munster fans are reduced to cheering on the opposition. And that's what being a sports fan is all about. 7:51 this morning. It is time for the only correct power rankings.
I absolutely adore them lads. I have unbelievable time for them, but they're a great bunch, but it's not acceptable.
All right, let's run through these. We have the race for Sam Maguire. We have the race for the Tailteann Cup heating up at the moment. We bring you from county number 32 to county number 1. In at number 32.
Mike's on there, Colin. Yeah.
Oh.
That was lucky.
Colin,
I can't believe he asked me that stupid question at the end there.
he usually goes effing and blinding into the box. The one day he doesn't.
How about those stupid questions, eh?
He manages to keep the mic hot. Number 32 is Waterford. They were beaten by Wicklow in the Tailteann Cup. London, unlucky enough in their match against Sligo at the weekend, had a penalty saved in the second period of extra time. They were 2-point losers in that game. They're down to 31. Laois had a poor season, and their year is done. They're down to 30. The thing is, on the weekend against Westmeath, they lost by 3 points, and they were 3 points up in the second half of this game. They had an extra man, and then they got a man sent off themselves. If that hadn't happened, it could have been a situation where Laois could have turned the season on its head, but really when you look back on it, you'd have to say it was a very, very disappointing season. Wicklow were beaten by Offaly well at the weekend. They're down to 29, and Tipperary are one of the big fallers this week. They're down to 28th after that defeat to Carlow. Big upset, possibly the upset of the weekend really. Robbie Kiley and Bill Maher were missing for Tip, but they should be better than Carlow. They hammered them earlier in the year in the league, and David Power, speaking afterwards, couldn't really put his finger on what has exactly happened since the league final. It wouldn't have taken a huge turn of events for them to possibly win that league final against Cavan and Croke Park not so long ago, and now they've been dumped out by Carlow in the Tailteann Cup. Antrim dumped out by Leitrim from the Tailteann Cup, and Enda McGinley has stepped down. A couple of good results in the league earlier this year, doesn't feel that long ago, but it was a disappointing end to the season. One of my favourite moments from this game at the weekend was Pat Shivers of Antrim, another great GAA name. He kicked a great score off his left boot, and the boot went flying, you know, like what happened to you at school, and the boot almost went over the bar as well. Pat Shivers himself got sent off eventually late in the game. They were beaten by 5 points by Leitrim, a game that a result that we did not call. I think it's fair to say we got to put our hands up and say credit to Andy Moore and his team on that one. Longford stayed put at 26. They lost to Fermanagh. Carlow, one of the big risers, and after that win against Tip, didn't see that coming either, to be honest. They were hammered by Louth in Leinster by 15 points, and then firstly out in the Tailteann Cup get a win against Tipperary to kickstart their season. Wexford were narrowly beaten this time by Offaly. They beat them in the Leinster Championship, and then Offaly got their revenge. They're down to 24th, and then Sligo up to 23rd. Now, I did say earlier on that London possibly could have won that game against Sligo. Sligo did have an extraordinary tally of wides in that game, so they might feel that they should be better than 2-point winners against London. But winning is all that matters, and that's 2 wins in the championship for them this year so far for them. But none of the teams that they've beaten are actually Irish teams. New York and London, the teams that have gone down to Sligo, so they're still alive in that competition. And then Leitrim up to 22nd, and I would say to you, if you don't think that the Tailteann Cup matters, watch the footage of Leitrim's second goal against Antrim at the weekend, and when they score it, a Leitrim man stands over an Antrim man going, yeah, and one of the Antrim fellas kicks out at the player celebrating, and it didn't quite lead to any sort of brawl or anything like that, but I was like, this is championship right there, goading and kicking out. That's what you want to see. Leitrim 22nd, down 21st, down a spot. Like they played Monaghan and Cavan this year in the championship, and they've lost both games. You wouldn't expect them to win either game, and despite all the issues that clearly have been going on behind the scenes there, even if things were right there, you'd still might have favoured Monaghan and Cavan in those games. Offaly then up to 20th, playing a lot of young lads, it seems. John Maughan making the point that they're taking this competition very seriously because it's a huge competition for the likes of the young players of Offaly. He says that they're using it as a foundation. Like he mentioned, some of the younger players that they've played, Morgan Tynan, Cathal Flynn, Jack Bryant and Keith O'Neill, and he says it's a great competition for them and an opportunity for them to play alongside the likes of Niall McNamee. So blending experience and youth is what Maughan is doing. An 8-point win against Wicklow. Fermanagh up to 19th after their win in the Tailteann Cup against Longford. They had Ultan Kellan back for them at the weekend. He stayed at home from Australia this season to rehab a hip injury. He ended up kicking 1-1, so he was the difference for Fermanagh at the weekend. Absolute quality. And Louth, we're getting into the Sam Maguire teams here now, are down to 18th, didn't play at the weekend. Westmeath are up to 17th. Very, very nervous win against Laois, it must be said. Meath then staying put at 16th. Limerick down to 15th. The best moment for them really at the weekend was Josh Ryan, Maurice Fitzgerald style, knocking one over the bar against Kerry from the sideline, wearing Macassar gloves on one of the warmest days of the year.
Wow.
James O'Donoghue would not be happy. I haven't listened to the football pod this week, but
I think you get a free pass for if you're the Macassars.
Okay, right.
I think that's
that's fair.
Their grandfather in. Everything else, no.
Absolutely class, and some score as well from Josh Ryan. But I've dropped them down a place. I've actually dropped them below Clare, which may be harsh. They did beat Clare in the championship, but it was in a penalty shootout. And as we always say, who would win if the game was in the morning? And maybe Clare would have kept it to below 20 against Kerry. I don't know. But maybe that's overly harsh in Limerick. Cork then up to 13th, I guess. When we look back on the Munster Championship, they were the ones who put it up to Kerry the most, even though they had home comforts in that game. Cavan staying put at 12th. They were good at the weekend in their win against Down. Raymond Gallagher was amazing. He made 2 penalty saves in quick succession, and he also kicked 7 points.
They have to win the Tailteann Cup to justify being 12th.
Yes.
There's no other outcome that will allow your rankings to maintain credibility.
I think the rankings are eternally credible, and nothing could ever damage the credibility.
Like the Pope, okay.
Exactly like the Pope. The power rankings,
just as an institution,
like
your power rankings, almost.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Except no cheap imitations, which you apparently are getting everywhere these days. But go on.
Kildare are staying put at 11. I just couldn't drop them below any of those teams below them. Maybe it's too generous to them. Roscommon staying put at number 10. Armagh at number 9. Tyrone in at 8. Monaghan at 7. I'm going through all the teams that have had a couple of weeks off getting ready for the qualifiers, obviously. Monaghan at number 7. And then we got a few movers here. Donegal down to 6th. Down 3 spots, actually. They were in the top 3 before last weekend. Looking through some of the statistics at the weekends, their conversion rate was a big problem for Donegal. They actually had 32 shots compared with Derry's 26, and according to GAA Statsman, they had a 46% conversion rate compared with Derry's 65%. So that's the losing of the game for Donegal at the weekend. We can talk about the approach to the game and how Derry stopped them, and they did a brilliant job of doing that. But Donegal's conversion was very, very poor, and that's why they're down to 6, and that's why they lost the game at the weekend. Mayo staying put at number 5, and Galway breaking into the top 4 after their win at the weekend, up 2 spots to number 4.
This is the first time all season that Galway have been ahead of Mayo.
It is, and I was a little bit concerned after the win against Mayo that Roscommon would beat them in the Connacht final, and I thought that statistically when he dug into that Mayo game there was it wouldn't have taken, again, a whole pile of different things to happen for Mayo to win that game. So I just wanted another game, and they won it. And to be honest with you, it was kind of the opposite of the Mayo game, where I think Galway could have won by more in an alternate universe.
It's your internal version of XG, basically, was whatever the GAA version of that is.
Yeah, that's exactly it. The only metric that counts. Well, what's interesting now is
you could call it your gaydar or something.
That's exactly it. The gaydar. The last time we had an All-Ireland final that didn't comprise of Kerry, Dublin, Mayo, Donegal, Tyrone was 2010, like 11 years ago. There's only 5 counties that have made up all of the All-Ireland since then. We've got Galway at 4, Derry at 3 this year. On the one side of the draw, this year could very well be the year.
Yeah.
I mean, Mayo could just draw one of them and go all the way to the final, of course, and Tyrone possibly could do the same thing, and that we could be back to a very similar thing.
Yeah, well, we should have had Monaghan beating Tyrone in one of those semi-finals. If the form lines coming from Ulster had held, that would have happened. I mean, Tyrone really only get in there because they won it last year, though.
Yeah.
You know, you would have said they were an outlier up to that point.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, maybe.
Well, they got to 2018 as well, and so they've been in those finals. And I think with regards to Tyrone as well, I think that their floor is obviously quite low, and it's probably they're running around their floor at the moment, but their ceiling is also much higher than pretty much all those teams, not in the top 2 at the moment, I would think. And if we're here in a week's time and Tyrone are after beating Armagh, I think we're talking about Tyrone as potential All-Ireland finalists if they're undecided a draw that doesn't contain Kerry and Dublin. So I am holding my Jets a little bit on that just yet, but it does look very, very encouraging for Galway and Derry at the moment. And the top 3, Kerry 3, Dublin 2, Derry 2, Dublin 1. No, I'm only joking. It's Derry 3, Dublin 2, Kerry 1. So Derry, obviously, the first team up there. A decade in which they won just one Ulster Championship game. They go back to back to back. Monaghan, Tyrone, Donegal, an incredible run from them. And like, you can talk about every different aspect of this team, management, the support that is following this team that we saw on the pitch the last day, and this looks like a team that are like a boulder rolling down a hill at the moment, and they're going to be very, very hard stopped, and I think that they will be good in Croke Park, and their style of play will be very interesting come Croke Park. Dublin staying put at number 2, and Kerry staying put at number 1. So
it's the thing about Derry, not that they've been able to win games in different types of ways, and that they've actually shown already that they have an attacking prowess, that we've seen them against Tyrone when they needed to rack up a score early to get out in front. They were capable of doing it, and that, like, you know, the evidence needs to be on the basis of this year and last year, that this has been a slow, steady build where they corrected any defensive issues that they might have had. They got all of their best available players, or the vast majority of their best available players, completely aligned. Like, James O'Donoghue keeps talking about Chrissy McKaig's man marking abilities, putting him in, like, in the conversation for footballer of the year, like a shoe in for an all-star if there was one today, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, that suddenly makes them very dangerous.
Yeah, like
in Croke Park against a good team who is like, well, we haven't seen this in a while because everybody stopped doing this. Really, everybody stopped being as good at doing this as you are at the moment.
Yeah, and I do think that, like, I mean, when we look at the last thing that people are using as a reference point for Derry, it's that Donegal team. I mean, they hit Croke Park, things went pretty well for them. So
it did take them a year, right? You know, I mean, they went okay that first year as well. Like, they got to a semi-final. Yeah,
they just moved the dial a little bit more in 2012 compared to 2011. They were just maybe overly defensive in 2011. That first half, obviously the notorious first half against Dublin.
Yeah, but if McFadden scores the goal he's supposed to score at the start of the second half, they win the game.
Yeah.
And they knock the Dubs out and everybody's like, wow. Do you know?
Yeah, it would have been very interesting to see what would have happened in that final. They possibly would have taken Kerry that year. Kerry, it might have been caught cold a little bit by what was actually coming from Donegal, and Donegal do beat them a year later with a relatively similar team. So maybe they get over the line initially, and maybe that's what's going to happen to Derry here. Like, as we've said, like, they've got every chance of going all the way. It's just that quarter-final draw. Getting that first win in Croke Park, I think, will be important, and if they can get a relatively forgiving draw first up in the next round, then I think they could very, very much be in the conversation. Like, you talk about all those different players that have stepped up for them over the last little while. It's like, if you're a forward who is tasked with running back or contributing to overall play, you know that you've got a massive job in your hands, whether it's McKaig, whether it's Rogers, whether it's McKinless. Somebody's going to put you on the back foot. Could Donegal have done maybe a better job to stop Michael Murphy being put on the back foot so much, as in playing closer to goal more often? Maybe, but then that system played around him. The Derry defensive system might have completely cancelled that out as well. So, like, Rory Gallagher deserves a huge amount of credit for what's happened. Like, some of the stuff that you read about him and his attention to detail in when it comes to opposition analysis is just incredible. Like, there was a great piece, I can't remember who wrote it, but the day before the day of the Monaghan game in one of the Sunday papers, there was just this anecdote that when he was with Donegal and when they beat Cork in an All-Ireland semi-final, he knew exactly what time the Cork management team would be bringing on their substitutions, and like clockwork.
I think it was Mick Foley wrote the piece.
Mick Foley wrote the piece, I think, yeah. I can't remember who came up with the anecdote, and it was just the players were like, whoa, okay, this guy knows what he's talking about when it comes to opposition analysis. And I'm sure when you're working under Jim McGuinness, maybe you can focus in on that sort of stuff a little bit more. And by the sounds of things, he's surrounded himself with a backroom team that is as well equipped as what Jim McGuinness did in 10, 11, 12, or 11, 12 in particular. So that entire team, I think, deserves a lot of credit for daring the backroom team. And when you listen to the players talk, it's like, wow, it's almost like a mini cult. They're so in thrall of what's actually going on.
So you still have Kerry number 1?
Kerry are still number 1 for me. Yeah, like the couple of issues.
You're getting kicked out of the Kerry Mafia. Like, as we speak, there is like your WhatsApp is pinging there. It's like it's melting down. Going, what are you doing?
The thing is, like, if you were building the power rankings from scratch, would Kerry be number 1 or would Dublin be number 1? It would definitely be one of the two of them, I think. But the thing is, we've been doing these since the National League, and there's been absolutely no reason to take Kerry off the top spot. The only concern is that Kerry gained top spot because of the National League. That's a long time ago at this point.
And also because Dublin were clearly not really that focused on winning the National League this year. They have some other fish that are in the frying pan right now.
Competitions
and they're
available.
big. They're big fish.
Yeah.
Big meaty fish.
I was looking at this the other day. The only time this century that Kerry have won in All Ireland without going through the back door or without a replay was 2007. So Kerry have tended to need some sort of adversity at some point. A kick up the ass. And Jack O'Connor has obviously been one of those people who has utilised the kick up the ass better than...
This is also the first time that they've had Northern influence in the coaching ticket though, right?
Yeah, so you'd like to think that maybe that's... and they will surely be aware of that. Like, the thing is, what you say about that is, well, I was just going to say, the thing you'd say is that, like, you have that Northern influence, which maybe, which maybe spells, like, ruthlessness. And I think Jack O'Connor's a very ruthless man himself. But Kerry have been accused of not being ruthless enough at the weekend. Like Billy Lee was saying, what I would say about Kerry is that they're always respectful of the opposition. They could have kicked another couple of goals, but they took the points. I've always known that about Kerry. They don't tattoo a team when they have them beat. They're respectful, and that's not unnoticed. And now Brian Sheahan was asked about that on the Irish Examiner podcast yesterday, and he says that he was never asked to tattoo not to tattoo an opponent. That I don't buy into this, especially earlier on when Kerry had the goal chances and didn't take them, that they should have been taking them, that they should have been taking the goals, and the goal scoring is a bit of an issue for Kerry at the moment. So that's his point, that they didn't show that true killer instinct on Saturday, even though they won by 23 points.
I mean, first thing is, did they not? They didn't tattoo you? I think they did. There's like that. That's going to be a scarring impact for Limerick football. But that's interesting, because would if you were to pick one word to describe the Dubs in the first 25 minutes against Kildare, would like absolute tattoo, ruthless? Would that be? They had the big thing out. They were like writing their names all over.
This was not one of those like wash on tattoos.
Oh, let's be kind to. It wasn't henna. No. Let's be kind to poor Kildare. We want some opposition in Leinster for the next few years, and maybe they'll stop talking about splitting us if we just win this game by a few points. Nah, squash. Squash again. Squash. Oh, one more. Squash.
If you go back to the, what do we call it again? The GAA the GAA the Dublin's finishing, as well as that ruthlessness, is just absolutely incredible. It's like a collection of Young Min Sons on the pitch, where it's like XG doesn't make any sense. Like the Cormac Costello goal, the John Small goal. Like, I mean, we all know that John Small can play. That finish was exceptional. They had 31 shots on Saturday. Kildare had 27. So only 4 more shots than Kildare.
There you go. It's close to take the goals out of it.
If you take the goals out of it, Peter Keane style, then this game there was only a kick of a ball in it. So their efficiency has been a trademark of the great Dublin teams, and that efficiency is something that has very much been present so far in this championship. Again, the only thing is what will happen when they come up up against a better team and they're in a fight for 80 minutes, because that bench is just the one thing you might have slight concerns about. Now, here's the thing, like the bench last day was Niall Scully, Cian Murphy, Aaron Byrne, Johnny Cooper, Brian O'Leary. We know that 2 of that 5 are absolutely proven. The thing is with Cian Murphy and Brian O'Leary and Aaron Byrne is that they're unproven, but that doesn't mean that they are not good players. That doesn't mean that they can't be coming to a peak this year, and it doesn't mean that they can't be shooting the lights out in A versus B games in training. So there is still very much a jury is still out nature to that bench, but that's the worst thing you can say about it. You can't really say categorically that's a bad bench or those are bad players coming out for Dublin, because they're clearly not. Dessie Farrell is clearly trusting them with minutes. Let's just see what happens now when they come up against a better team, because that's when we'll really find out how strong that bench is.
Very quickly, Mark says in McGuinness's book, he says himself he thinks Kerry would have hammered them in 11 as he felt Donegal weren't ready to face the Kerry jersey on an occasion like an All-Ireland final yet. I'm not sure that's true. I think that's the type of stuff you put in your book and you're like, just in case we ever meet them again down the road. Shifty Lad says, good morning lads, best of luck with Try a Tie, Ger. Wishing I could do it myself. Owen, shame. That's the opposite of the hail Celtic thing. Danny says the smell of them McCastles after a game. That's just the smell of yourself, Danny. Bit of self-loathing going on from the clammy, plasticky, whatever the material actually is. Is it kind of mix of polyester and elastic? And shame.
No idea. I don't know what were those things made of.
I don't know. I mean, certainly you wouldn't want them to get close to fire and be on your hands at the same time. Kenny the dad says, I won minor championships in Dublin featured in county underage sides, then played at the top level in London for years. I now only watch hurling and the one London Championship game a year. The game to me is not just as enjoyable as it once was. I can't put my finger on it apart from Donegal's All-Ireland win. I mean, like, honestly, watching Dublin Mayo playing football over the last number of years has not been the high watermark of Irish sport. Like,
but I wonder, is that why people are, criticising what we're seeing in Ulster, is because the high watermark has been reached? And when you see
what
two
drove
teams,
them on? What turned Dublin into that all-conquering super team? Donegal.
Yeah.
Donegal are like this hinge point in Irish Gaelic football history. And that only happened because of the... look... Leave it, Jake. It's Chinatown.
But what did that Donegal team do? That Donegal team did evolve into something a bit more dynamic
but in
those later years under McGuinness.
It didn't. Here's the thing. In the game against Kildare, in the first game that they won, which is an 11 in the quarter-final, their cornerbacks are up in the right corner forward position, overlapping at various stages. They just hadn't perfected it yet because it was we're doing something better and new and evolutionary. And this is how things change. Because they had good games that they could measure themselves in the championship against. Nobody else has that. Like, you can't see an evolution of Kerry's football style beyond a few games in the league and then an All-Ireland quarter-final, because there's nothing for them. Everything comes back to structures. You fix the structures and then come back to me with the game's boring. Anyway, 11 minutes past 8. A reminder, the Football Pod, live. Paddy Andrews, James O'Donoghue and special guests. Go to the Royal Theatre in Castlebar on Thursday, June the 2nd. That's next Thursday, in celebration of Mayo football. I mean, obviously I mean Thursday week, but you know what I mean. It's next week and Thursday. It's also a look at the championship race and so much more. So they'll preview in detail the Mayo Monaghan game, but they'll also tell you about whether or not Owen's power rankings are correct and anything you want them to talk about. That's the thing. They're live and in glorious Technicolor. The Football Pod live in Castlebar Thursday, June 2nd. Tickets are on sale now. Go to otbsports.com/events to get yours today. Stay tuned to OTB for more details on more shows to come. Keith Wood's up next. Stay tuned.
OTB AM. This is OTB Sports Radio.
Have you subscribed to the OTB Football Podcast?
Jack Grealish was like taking the Freddie Flintoff mantle here and just...
people always complain that football is dull and boring. There's no personality. The goodness has been coached out of them. We miss people like Paul Gascoigne. Enjoy him.
Room 101 will come forever. Well, mine would be Saipan, the white suits, and probably Roy Keane.
Oh! Keane makes it all the way in.
Subscribe now to the OTB Football Podcast stream wherever you get your podcasts and download the OTB Sports app.
The Football Pod with Paddy Andrews and James O'Donoghue is heading west and they want you to join them. Paddy, James and host Tommy Rooney are Castlebar bound on Thursday, June 2nd, and just announced to be joining them on stage is the Mayo legend Keith Higgins. They'll relive old Dublin, Kerry and Mayo battles at Croker and beyond, as well as analysing Championship 2022. That's the Football Pod at the Royal TF Castlebar. Tickets are €20 plus booking fees. Get yours now at otbsports.com/events.
Things that put people off on a first date. Showing up late and getting your name wrong? Always a great start. Looking at their phone more than you? Hello? Someone who only talks about themselves. Oh, really? God, aren't you great? Look, no one said dating is perfect, but at GoDating.ie, we promise we'll always try and find your perfect match. And if you sign up today, you'll get 1 week on GoDating.ie absolutely free. Yes, even you, socks and sandals guy. Go on, go for it with GoDating.ie.
OTB AM.
With Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating bar.
14 minutes past 8. Time to turn back to rugby. Keith Wood is with us. Keith, good morning to you. How are you?
Morning, Ger. I'm great, thank you.
The Telegraph very quickly yesterday, their match report wasn't really a match report at all. It was like, oh, look at this, Ronan O'Gara, straight to the top of the queue. there's a bit of an issue in that, you know, the RFU have said that they want to go internal, but they might change their rules for the right candidate. All of a sudden he's being linked, he will literally be linked with every job, maybe with the exception of the All Blacks game, the All Blacks one. And even then, because of his time down there, they might be like, yeah, come on, sure, we'll at least give you a Zoom call. The stock has never been higher for Ronan O'Gara, has it?
No, it's been pretty extraordinary few days for him, you know, because I think everybody, us included, of the unlikelihood of the fact that La Rochelle would actually go and get the win, and so suddenly, against all the odds, he wins in his first time as the real boss. Yeah, it's been pretty amazing for him. Pretty amazing few days. Look, the English job thing is. That'll always come out in the Telegraph because everybody's searching for a lot of people. A lot of English people don't particularly like Eddie Jones or the style in which he's playing. So they're looking for changes all the time. I think Rog needs to look and see what he wants. But if we're being honest about Ronan, he's always done it his own way. He has always plotted out what he wanted to do. He has taken the road less travelled. And he's delivered wherever he's travelled. So I think it makes for a very interesting high stool conversation. But I think he's an awful lot more to do in the club game yet before he gets to international rugby.
The other thing is that the La Rochelle job is actually probably his for life if he wants it. And also, it's a brilliant, brilliant job because the expectation was not that they were going to be one of the best teams in Europe as soon as he got the job. But all of a sudden, they're able to do that, which means players who want to play at that level will be more easily convinced to sign for them. The lifestyle is sensational. It's literally one of the nicest parts of the world to live in, but particularly in Europe. It's one of the nicest parts of Europe that you can live in and play top quality rugby. His reputation is through the roof. The style is really interesting. Like, they can play any style you want. They will mix and match. So whatever type of player you are, you can go there and thrive. And you know what? Why would you move now?
Well, I think that's part of it, actually. And I imagine they're going to want to make certain they can hold on to him, and it'll go a little bit deeper into their pockets. And as for every successful coach, is what happens. But I was trying to think about this over the weekend in terms of international rugby first. International coaching is often the death knell for coaches. Even when they're successful, it seems like they drop off the face of the earth after they're gone from it, you know. And you can see the rehabilitation that Stuart Lancaster had to go through after losing the England job in 2015. So it can be very, very tough. It can also be incredibly frustrating because you only have a limited amount of time with the players and there's only maybe 10 or 12 matches a year. Raj looks like he's thriving off the pressure of the amount of time and the influence he's able to impart on a group of players who look, they've all spoken out really well about him afterwards, you know, and it's been, you know, the crazy Irishman and his ideas and what he wants to do and what he believes. And look, it looked as if they took every bit of belief that he had. And look, I know Raj a long time. We've had these conversations on here about the doubts that he has and had at different times, and it's how he went through those doubts. That's an amazing journey and an amazing lesson to be able to pass on, and he obviously has the skill to pass it on. So you looked at a team that had lost 2 finals last year, who had lost Victor Vito, who's probably their most influential player, Kerr Barlow, and then the players that come in instead, who haven't played a huge amount of rugby, were phenomenal. So I think he did an incredible job at the weekend. I think his team did an incredible job at the weekend. And they seem to play very, very smart. But he also said in his post-match interview, which I thought was a study in how to be gracious in victory, he also said this was the start of something. And I don't think it was the start of something for him. It's the start of something for the team. So that's what I read into it.
He's also said multiple times in the past that he's a big fan of honouring a contract. It is a big deal to him, and he does have a deal right the way through until 2024. So it would take quite the offer for him to be ripped away from La Rochelle before then, you'd suspect.
Yeah, I think so, and I do actually. I think that's a very important part for Raj, and I think he likes that idea of building something, of trying to, you can't say have a team follow in his image, because you can't have him and Will Skelton in the same conversation. They look like different species. Will is an absolute giant of a man, and my God, was he well able to play. And but they have the right attitude. They have the same attitude. And he seemed to get, he seemed to get them to play beyond. I mean, I was trying to have a look through the game again, not watching it again, but thinking about it again. And I couldn't quite get over the quality of some of the performances. Raj had been saying he thinks they have a better 23, and everybody kind of poo-pooed that when they heard it. But actually the big performances on the day, most of the big performances came from La Rochelle. They didn't come from Leinster. And that's something that's, they were primed for the final, and they were set for the final. And yes, they have big players and all that, but it wasn't just that. It was their players played. And I said it last week when I was on with Joe, that, La Rochelle had to play at their absolute best. Well, they very nearly did. I don't know if they could have played a whole lot more. I mean, but who'd be a coach when you see Levalt on 64 minutes tripping one of the Leinster players? I mean, who'd be a coach in that? Like, that was the winning and the losing of the game, or so everybody thought at that moment in time. And they still managed to fight it out for that 10 minutes with 14 players.
So were Leinster not primed for the occasion?
For me, Leinster looked a little bit... Well, they were definitely off kilter, and I know they were off kilter because of some of the defence. They were off kilter. The line speed was fast, but it wasn't ludicrously fast. I thought they just, whether they were nervous, they definitely weren't complacent, but whether they were nervous, but a lot of the passing didn't go where it has gone all season, and I know that's a factor of the pressure that you're put under. But there's a slickness that we're used to seeing in Leinster's back play and the interaction, and that wasn't there at all. And I felt that fed into some of the decisions not to kick to the corner at different times. And in many respects, La Rochelle giving away a lot of penalties, which I think in the first half should have led to a yellow card and didn't. But in them kicking all the points, it looked as if La Rochelle were happy enough to do that, to accept those 3 points against them, it wasn't as much of keeping Leinster in the game, and it was nearly the right thing. That's the other point. I mean, you can argue against Leinster. I don't think Leinster were at their best. I thought they were a bit frozen at different times. They were over anxious, running over the ball. A lot of the passes then were being pulled. So there was it was picked up in commentary, but it happened all the time. A lot of the passes were almost behind them. So that makes life very, very difficult. But they nearly had a winning strategy. And actually it was a winning strategy if it had lasted a bit longer. But the idea of kicking all the kicks at goal actually kept La Rochelle in the game, strangely.
So is that the bit that Leinster got wrong, in that they went away from, because all season long the ball's in the hands of whoever the out half is for Leinster, and they're kicking to the corner. They're not just taking those points. They're like, we're going to continually build the pressure, and if we don't come away with 7 now, it doesn't really matter, because we know that what we're doing is we're absolutely stressing you, and whatever you do in your defensive line out here, we're going to know that the next time, and then we'll just get you the next time. Don't worry, we're coming for the 7 points, and we're going to score those tries early, and the game will be over. What got into Leinster's head about it being a final and a knockout cup rugby? Is there something there?
Yeah, I don't know, but normally the ball is, before we'd even have a conversation about it, that ball would have been kicked into the corner. I just felt at times there seemed to be a conflab between James Ryan and Johnny Sexton over what option are we going to do now. Normally you don't even think about that. So I don't know whether it was they were a bit shell-shocked with the scrum, which was very destructive against them. Some of the line-out misfirings or whatever happened, but the confidence that they've had and shown all year ebbed away a little. It still meant they're still brilliant. They're a brilliant team, and they were again, I say a minute away from winning. So it's hard to fault them, but you can say that they didn't reach some of the heights. Now, maybe that was partly to do with the manner in which La Rochelle played. Of course it is. And also it being a final. And finals are, they fray every nerve. They fray every fan's nerve, but they fray the players' nerves too, and it's, I don't know. I didn't, even as the game was going along, I just didn't see that Leinster weren't going to win. And maybe that was something that had kind of fit into them, that they can, we can hold this out till the very end. But they just never seemed to get enough of points ahead. So there was always just the opportunity for La Rochelle to get a score and get back into the game. And then it would come down to a very nervous end. And as O'Gara said consistently, they play well in the last 20 minutes. Now, I still think it took a couple of superhuman efforts. I thought Will Skelton staying on for 80 minutes was amazing. I thought Haddad was fantastic, though I felt he went off for a HIA, but I thought he was out of it. But even at the very end, Leinster had to get a yellow card at the end and didn't. They gave away far too many penalties there, and I think it would have been the carnage almost, with the amount of noise if that hadn't happened, if they hadn't got that score at the end. But I just thought so many of the players, the La Rochelle players were... So if you look now, and I don't know whether people have done this, but if you look and say, who are the best players on the field? I'll ask you that, sure. Who did you think the best players on the field were?
Well, Skelton, right? I don't think Leinster performed. That's the biggest thing here, is that none of the Leinster players, you would say, so even though they almost win the game, you wouldn't say that they were at their best. And that's the big concern, because this is Ireland, really. This is the backbone of the Ireland team with 3 players. You add in 3 players and a much better bench, obviously, when you get to the Ireland thing. And that is important. We shouldn't diminish that. But, if you're any of the teams who are going to come up against Ireland in the World Cup or next year's Six Nations, the video is detailed, the analysis is done, and you're like, here, and here. And that's how we stop them. And it's quite straightforward now, and the tape is out, and we're a year out from a World Cup, and it's like, oof, this does not bode well. I'd say Andy Farrell's looking at this going, lads, come on.
Yeah, look, there's a couple of things on that now that are, I would say, almost reassuring for me, but I just want to go back to the players first and foremost. Dante was fantastic. Antonio played his part incredibly well. Burgari, the hooker, was phenomenal. Priso was pretty phenomenal. Gregory Aldred has been the best player I've seen all year, and actually for the last 2 years. I just can't get over the quality of play. So they're all the standout players for me when you're looking at the game, and they're not Leinster guys, and they have been Leinster guys all the time that we've been talking previously. So right, so the thing that makes me look up from this and say this is mostly the Irish team and this is a template on how to beat them, well, it's a year out. Thank God it isn't a month out. That's the difference. So it has been a very influential style of play. It's been a style that I really like myself, I have to say. I love the manner in which it goes about it. I love the sort of diamond shape in around the 10. I love the amount of different ball carriers that are there at the very start that are offloading. But you still have to do it. You can't like it as an idea and then kind of clam down a little bit, which I think happened. But also you need other options when that's stopped. So what happens when the ball is slow? What other options do you have to use? What way can you speed it up again? Do you put extra players in to make certain this works at this time? Because that's what La Rochelle did. And when they would look at it and say there's only 1 or 2 players going in, they'd throw 3 players in and just slow it down heavily, then get back into a defensive set. So they were in a good place. So, for me, Farrell will look at this and say, okay, we knew this was going to happen. Nobody has a plan that doesn't get out-coached at some stage. This is how it's out-coached. What is our counter plan for that? So for me, a year out from a World Cup, a year and a half out, I say, yeah, that's pretty decent. We can take all that. But look, I think you need other players to stand up to it. And I do think that it was a strange day when Keenan had a bit of an off day, and he's never had an off day. I haven't seen him play badly at all, and Johnny wasn't totally on fire. He had somebody in his eye line every minute, which you'd expect to happen, actually.
Last question about Sexton then. We talked about this yesterday on the show with Alan Quinlan. Is there a point where you just decide that we're going to have Sexton on the field at the end of the game because actually, when the game is in the melting pot, we want our best player on the field of play? He can't last, it seems, has not played 80 minutes very often over the last number of years. So therefore, you can't start him. If you want him on at the end, you can't start him. Is there any world in which we just decide, okay, if we want him to play in the World Cup, for example, all those games in that short period of time, which again, I don't think he's actually ever done, what do we do here?
Absolutely no idea. I think the biggest quandary in Irish rugby is 10 and Johnny. And look, I was critical of Johnny a few years ago, but I think he's played fantastically well this year, and he has been pretty much the master of all he's surveyed. What everybody now knows, well, very few out-halves play very well under intense scrutiny and pressure every second of every minute, and that's actually what happened at the weekend. And there still isn't guys putting their hand up beside him to say, well, I should be picked instead. That's the issue, both at Leinster and at Ireland. There are lots of guys kind of waiting in the wings. They have got a fair amount of experience, but maybe they don't have the full level of experience. I think it's a huge risk having a guy that's 37 going at a World Cup. I want him going there, leading Ireland to getting past a quarter-final, getting to a semi-final.
Starting those games. Can you see him starting?
I don't know. I don't know. It's funny, I kind of argue with and against him on this one, but he has the desire to play, and nobody has pushed him off that perch. It's an interesting place to be. Really.
I just think he's more valuable at the end of games than he is at the start of games. Do you know? Or at least we need to find that out. And the Tour to New Zealand has to be the last real opportunity to go, okay, we're going to start whoever at 10, right? But Sexton's going to come off for the last 25 minutes of every game, guaranteed at least 25 minutes, and sometimes it's going to be half time. And we're going to see what happens, so we at least then have some tape on this is how that works. This is how he performs under those circumstances. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But at least we'll know.
Well, I really think there's merit. There's merit in thinking of every option at the moment, because we need other options than just resting on a guy of his age. The last contract offer I got was to be a captain in Stade Francais for the last 20 minutes of every match. They just wanted a captain to finish the game. And now I was well retired at that stage. I couldn't walk across the road and I might run and play a game of rugby. But, that was their idea. It was, the idea was just entirely different. They said, look, we don't want you to start the games. We just want you to be clear-headed at the end of the game. Yeah. That's what we like, fresh at the end of the game.
I see the merits in it, for sure.
Yeah. So
you would have done well a year in Paris. Maybe, better even off the field than on the field.
Well, yeah. Do you know what? It wasn't even tempting, strangely. About 6 months after retiring, my whole body went back to front. Everything went wrong with it. So that wasn't there. This was 2 years after.
Fair enough.
2 years after retiring. No, it was a very interesting idea, but I didn't. I wanted to play there at some stage when I was younger. I can see the allure for Raj, and I have to say for Donnacha Ryan, which shout out to Donnacha, an ex-Munchins man and Nina Orman man, getting a chance to have an influence, and the forwards did an awful lot of really good work at the weekend. But to take that chance, which is difficult. I mean, there was a lovely image when Raj came down off the crowd and hugged his wife Jessie, and they've travelled all over the world for his obsession, and this is a great marker for a guy who has done that. So I still think he's taken the most difficult path, going to New Zealand, where they often don't regard us with any real they're the exemplars of how the game should be played. So it's rare for them to take the views of other people in.
No, for sure.
And they embraced him, and he has used that to very good effect coming back.
Keith, we got to go. Good stuff. Thanks a million.
Brilliant. Cheers, lads.
That's Keith Wood giving us his thoughts on the weekend's rugby. You can share your views on 0879 180 180, or you can leave a comment on the YouTube stream. And a reminder, OTB AM brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. Now to the weekend's Formula 1, and I'm delighted to say Rebecca Clancy is with us to talk to us about the Monaco Grand Prix. Oh, no, we'll get Rebecca in 1 second. The Monaco Grand Prix somewhat overshadowed by all the rest of the various difficulties in sports events around the world, but they had their own issues, particularly around the start.
And people aren't happy with this whatsoever. You've got a collection of owners at the moment who are very, very unhappy with the governing body. I mean, these owners, of course, always right and can never be questioned. Interesting to see how this power dynamic works out over the next little while. Of course, the drivers themselves not happy either. Lewis Hamilton, one of the people to voice real concerns on Sunday afternoon as well about the nature of the delay.
A couple of quick comments. Munster are Manchester United, or where Manchester United are right now, cheering on everybody else that can beat our rival, says Philip. And Lorcan goes, do you not always cheer on the team that your rival is playing? Just wanted to establish that, Lorcan, you know, so that because that rivalry is important. It's going to drive each other to heights.
Yeah, like it's just when your team is successful in their own right, you can just, it's easier to find a little bit of classiness, you know.
Is it?
Not the easiest thing in the world to do, but it's just easier.
All right, we do have Rebecca Clancy with us now. Rebecca, good morning to you. How are you?
Good morning. I'm very well, thank you.
Yeah, we were just talking there about the row that has erupted around the Monaco Grand Prix and the start. Maybe talk specifically about that in a second, but the fault lines between the governing body and the sport itself, the Formula 1, the sport of Formula 1, it seems like there's kind of always a battle raging. Is this just the latest front on it, or is it actually something more serious and long lasting? Do you think the stuff that's going on at the moment?
I think it's quite serious, actually. There's quite a falling out happening at the moment. The FIA have a new president, Mohammed Ben Sulayem, who came in December. And his tenure so far has not been impressive. He was responsible for the investigation into the fallout from Abu Dhabi, which we obviously don't have to go over. Everyone knows what happened. That report was underwhelming, shall we say. And then there's been lots of fallings out because of this focus that the FIA have decided to go on about the jewellery ban, the underpants gates, as it's being known, making sure drivers are wearing the right underwear. And they are just focusing on the wrong things. And then, as you were saying, Monaco start was just another one of these examples of the FIA being perceived to have got it wrong and perhaps just being a bit too cautious. It's a really tricky one because obviously safety is paramount in F1. We know what happens when it goes wrong. It goes spectacularly wrong and people's lives are at risk. So they have to be careful, but they are treading on the side of being too cautious, I would say.
The start of a race seems to be something that, you know, they've done quite a lot of over the years. You'd think a level of expertise would have evolved and developed, and yet they seem to have got it so spectacularly wrong at the weekend.
Well, this is another one of those messes from the FIA. So about 10 minutes before the race, it started raining, very light, wasn't anything, you know, you barely needed an umbrella sort of thing. But then about 20 minutes, and at that point, they decided that they were going to postpone the start of the race. And when we spoke to Lewis Hamilton about it after the race, he just said, well, it's ridiculous. We're the 20 best drivers in the world. This excuse that the FIA came up with was because they hadn't had any wet running, so they were a bit nervous. So it's for safety reasons, as they said. Which is just, you know, it's rubbish. Daniel Ricciardo said the same thing. We should have got underway at 3:00. The rain wasn't that heavy. It was absolutely fine. And it would have produced a brilliant start because, quite frankly, Monaco is dreary at the best of times. So anything that could have spiced it up would have been welcomed. That said, at 3:20, the heavens opened and it was like a microburst. It was monsoon-like for about 10 minutes. If the race had gone ahead, it would have been red flagged. But then in all of this confusion, we're getting these messages from the FIA saying it's safety reasons and we're going to have this rolling start and it's just better being behind the safety car. But it later transpires about 2 hours after the end of the race that actually that wasn't the reason at all that we were given. It was because the rain had caused a power outage which had affected the starting lights, which meant that they couldn't actually even do a standing start. They had to do a rolling start. And then later in the race, when we had Mick Schumacher's crash and the race was red flagged and then it had to start again, they went for a rolling start again, even though we were all calling for a standing start. And we later found out it was because they weren't entirely convinced that they had sorted out the issue with the lights. And this is the sort of information you would think we would get during the race. But we weren't even really told it after the race. It was because it kind of trickled out, and we ended up finding out from Toto Wolff, actually, the Mercedes team principal. So it was farcical on the communication side as well, and no one really knew what was going on.
It's funny, one of the things that is supposed to have happened in the post-Bernie Ecclestone era is that communication is supposed to have vastly improved. And maybe it has, maybe it is still better, and this is just an example of it all going a bit pear-shaped. You're shaking your head there, so it hasn't really got better.
It doesn't feel like it's got better, no. I mean, there are certain people within the paddock who are very good at letting us know what's going on. You know, this isn't top secret information. If there's a lot of rain and there's a power outage, it's not the FIA's fault. You'd think that would be the source of information that they would pass on. But it just doesn't occur to them to tell, not even just us in the media. No one was finding out. The drivers didn't know, so they were furious that they weren't given the opportunity for a standing start twice. It's just really bizarre. It's quite a strange way to run a sport, I think.
Is your sense that these controversies are a significant enough issue for the unbelievable momentum that the sport has had to be checked a little bit?
What do you mean? Sorry.
As in, I mean, the burst of popularity in Formula One has just been incredible. Like, is this something that could damage that and that momentum?
Yeah. I mean, it's certainly not a good look for the sport, is it? F1's confusing at the best of times. There's a lot of techie engineering that goes into it. It's not just a simple case of 20 guys jumping in a car and driving around in circles, as I know many people think. And Netflix, the Drive to Survive documentary, that has done wonders for the sport. So people are coming in, but that very much simplifies the sport, and that's very much about the drivers and their personalities, which is brilliant because we don't always get to know them very well. It's very hard when they're wearing their helmets and then they're enclosed in their machinery. You don't really get a sense of who they are. So when people come to the sport and try and watch the races and they're told about these drivers and how they are the best in the world, and they can see a little bit of rain and people don't even have their brollies up, and they're thinking, well, why aren't we going? I don't really understand. And if we're not getting the communication, if we're not being told what's happening, it just adds further confusion. And so it's not a great look for the sport. And for these new fans, where it's pretty complicated anyway, it doesn't make them want to stick around, I imagine. And, the start was delayed by 75 minutes. I can't imagine many people stuck around for the whole time.
Yeah, it's a shocking development, really, when you think about it, for a little bit of rain when, we should expect inclement weather from time to time. Last thing here is really just about then the race itself for the driver's title. How straightforward will it be for the rest of the year? Is there any way that we might see Lewis Hamilton crowbar himself back into that conversation, or has that ship sailed?
I think, unfortunately, that ship has sailed. He's 75 points behind the championship leader at the moment, who is Max Verstappen. I can't really see a way past. Mercedes looked very good in Barcelona. They were always going to be terrible in Monaco. Even when they have the best car, they're always terrible in Monaco, simply because they have a very long car. It's very hard to drive a long car around a very tight, twisty track. So I think that ship has sailed. Even with George Russell, he's a bit closer, slightly more within touching distance. But it's not so much about Mercedes now. I just don't think Red Bull are going to take their eye off the ball. I don't think they're going to make the mistakes that we saw Ferrari make, which cost Charles Leclerc the win at the weekend, and also cost him the win in Spain when they had a reliability issue with their engine. I think Red Bull are just going to drive away with it, as it were. But it's a shame because we would have liked to see Mercedes in the hunt. But the thing to remember is we're in a new season of regulations, and these regulations are going to carry on. So it's really important for Mercedes to get this car right. They can't just give up and decide to switch to next year, because next year's car is based on this year's car. So it's great to see Mercedes making progress. So I think we'll have them in the title fight next year, but I think it will very much be between Ferrari and Red Bull. But we just have to keep our fingers crossed that Ferrari can sort out what looks like some issues going on. They certainly made huge mistakes, two big mistakes on Sunday, which couldn't be fixed on the track by Leclerc. And they've got some head scratching to do, I suspect, between now and the next race in Azerbaijan. And
is it your sense that we could have a proper 3-horse race next season then?
Yeah, there's no reason why not. Mercedes certainly look like they've found answers to their main issues. The porpoising, as we all know, about that violent bouncing of the car that gives you a headache just looking at it. So yeah, I think they're definitely going in the right direction. Even in the space of, we've had Spain was the 6th race. They were a second behind at the start of the season. Now they're half a second. If they can keep going at that trajectory, there's no reason to think that by the end of the year they won't be right up there fighting, probably causing a few issues in the championship fight, maybe taking some points off here and there and making that battle a bit more interesting. But they themselves, I don't think, will be in it. All
right, Rebecca, great to have you with us. Thanks a million. Cheers.
Cheers.
That's Rebecca Clancy of the Times there, giving us her thoughts on the weekend. Monaco. Johnny says, I'm not a big fan of the new F1 cars. Big bouncing lumps. Yes, they can follow closer, but Ross Brawn had us all thinking that they were going to revolutionise motor racing, like Haas had all of a sudden winning races. Yeah, it's good to know that even when there's like absolute billions invested in technology, sometimes being able to turn the lights from red to green doesn't work.
It's true, and it's definitely all the president's fault.
Like that dynamic is interesting, isn't it? That like you have this sport regulated when they could just break away and go, no, we're going to make our own rules here.
Yeah, that's true. There was also kind of complaints, wasn't there, a couple of weeks ago about safety, about the crash barriers that were on the course in Miami, and then a few weeks later, everybody's critical of the FIA for being too cautious when it comes to safety. I know they're very different things. Racing in the rain should be doable. It's you often quite have a limited amount of sympathy for some of the complaints that come out of Formula 1 teams, but it does seem that everybody's on one side after this weekend.
Right, 8:45 this morning, OTB AM brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. Carl's here. Carl, good morning to you.
Hey,
how are you
lads,
getting on? What's going on?
So UEFA says it will carry out a comprehensive review into issues at last Saturday's Champions League final in Paris. Thousands of supporters experienced problems in accessing the Stade de France, with kick-off delayed by 35 minutes. The UK government and Liverpool among those demanding an investigation, and the French government blaming ticket fraud for much of the problems. Meanwhile, the Republic of Ireland continue their preparations today for their upcoming Nations League campaign. Stephen Kennedy's side take on Armenia in their opening group game on Saturday. They'll also meet Scotland in this international window, as well as playing the Ukraine on 2 occasions. Todd Moley says he wants to build on Chelsea's remarkable history of success. The Americans consortium completed a €5 billion takeover of the club yesterday, and that brings to an end Russian oligarch Roman Abramovich's 19-year ownership of Chelsea. A big day ahead at the French Open tennis. The quarter-final stage gets underway. 2 of the favourites for the men's singles title go head-to-head. World number 1 and defending champion Novak Djokovic takes on 13-time champion Rafa Nadal. And that game is at Roland Garros this evening. The other last day tie today is the meeting of 3rd seed Alexander Zverev and 6th seed Carlos Alcaraz. The quarter-final stage of the women's singles also begins. Canadian Leylah Fernandez plays Mexico's Martina Trevisan. And then it's the All-American meeting of Coco Gauff and Sloane Stephens. In Gaelic Games news this morning, Dublin have been handed a boost in their bid to regain the All-Ireland ladies football title. Lauren McGee has decided to bring an end to her AFLW career, having spent time with Melbourne. Dublin winning the Leinster title last weekend, of course, after overcoming the challenge of Meath. While in Laois, the long-standing footballer John O'Loughlin has retired from the inter-county game. He played for 15 seasons, and Laois exited the Tailteann Cup on Sunday after an hour loss to Westmeath. In racing, 7 races today at Ballinrobe from 25 to 5, while the first of 7 races at Tipperary off at 5:15. And some other news breaking this morning. World number 1 Scotty Scheffler is the latest name to be added to the list for the JP McManus Pro-Am at Adair Manor in early July. The other additions announced this morning include Jordan Spieth, Patrick Cantley, Ricky Fowler, Jason Kokrak, Sam Burns and Tom Hoagie in the lineup for the event. Tiger Woods and Rory McIlroy, of course, already among the other names confirmed for that. And the Republic of Ireland women's national team set to travel to Turkey for a training camp to aid their preparation for their upcoming World Cup qualifier away to Georgia. They've also confirmed that they'll take on the Philippines in an international friendly, and that game is scheduled for the 19th of June.
Have you played it there?
No, I haven't. I drove by it last week, actually.
It's nice driving past it.
Yeah,
it looks very nice.
That's. I was there at the Irish Open when Harrington won. Is that 2000 and God, what year is it? 2007?
6. I'm going to say it's around then, all right, yeah.
Yeah, I can still remember the 18th there, and it's a great venue. Yeah, it's going to be some event. I think 19 of the 24 Ryder Cup players are confirmed now for that Pro-Am. So I mean, it's going to be unbelievable. The quality of that field. So 4th and 5th of July, and all for charity as well, which is brilliant.
Have you played it?
No. No.
Not yet.
No, if anybody wants to fix that though, you know.
Ryder Cup Pro-Am maybe in a few years' time.
Exactly, yeah. It's funny that they don't do Pro-Ams for the Ryder Cup, because I can just imagine how much money there would be spent on trying to get into that Pro-Am. Maybe they should start selling that, should they? An extra day to relieve a bit of the
pressure,
puffed up tension.
A special September JP Pro-Am potentially in whatever year the Ryder Cup is on.
Yeah.
When is it? How many years away are we now?
26 or 27. Is it 27?
Is the bypass getting done for it? Is that the whole knock-on impact of...
I was in that traffic there last week, and I tell you what,
trade-off.
Yeah, has to be done. Has to be. But I think there's special parking arrangements for the Pro-Am as well, that certain parking, you have to book parking and stuff like that, because it's just...
Do they park you in Limerick and then fly in by helicopter?
Yeah.
That's
probably.
The helipads are going to be in use, yeah. But lovely part of the world, great course, and they've done a lot of work there recently as well, so it's going to be a totally different venue for the Ryder Cup than it was for...
Is the course massively different?
I think they've totally changed kind of the base of the course in terms of the way that it's been built and the grass that's on it and stuff like that, without being overly au fait with greenkeeping. But they did spent a lot of money on it, and the green complexes are significantly different as well. But from what I hear from people that have played it since the kind of renovations, it's been termed as the European Augusta National. So that's praise indeed.
All right. It'd be good if we've got a tournament every year, then something else as part of that jointly sanctioned European PGA tours. That would be good.
Yeah,
a PGA tour event in Adair, we could happily have that.
Absolutely, and it is an American style golf course as well.
You take live golf in Adair?
I mean, no, probably not. Probably wouldn't. You know, I think maybe we should
You could come watch Phil Mickelson play every week.
Yeah, yeah. But it's definitely like one of the best venues in Europe now, and obviously if it's going to host the Ryder Cup in the longer term, you would think it will. It could be the Irish Open every second year, like the K Club has got it for 3 years now. I think it's confirmed. So we do have that kind of those big tournament venues that we have now with the K Club and Adair Manor, and then you've got all your links courses that are capable of hosting those sort of tournaments as well, so we're spoiled for choice.
No, definitely.
Yeah.
All right, Carl, good stuff. Thanks,
Thanks
Manny, for that. It's Carl Manny giving us his thoughts there. You can read more from Carl on otbsports.com across the day. And a reminder, we're brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. Boatman says, I think La Rochelle were underrated by the media. They comprehensively beat Leinster last year. It was never 4.5 to 1 odds as the bookies, more like 50-50, so no massive surprise really. I mean, I guess that's not true. That the bookies base their stuff on all of the available evidence. They stick all the data into the algorithms, and all the stats showed that Leinster were more than likely, the probability of them was that they were going to win the game. The spread was 12 points. And so it's not that it's the pundits were all wrong. It's like you can only go on the evidence available to you up to that point. Otherwise, it's just guesswork. I guess, I feel in my waters that La Rochelle are going to do it this weekend doesn't really qualify as analysis. Now, hopefully we'll find out sooner rather than later exactly what it was in terms of that information that Rog had been working on from the Leinster-Connacht game and the Leinster-Toulouse game, that he saw, okay, I can see this and I see this, and I see that if we put pressure on them at these points, we're going to be able to get something from it. Or was it the Ulster game that he said? Leicester. Sorry, yeah, Leicester. La Rochelle are a team with as many internationals as Leinster. Leinster have been held up as though they are the greatest to have ever done it, and now all the pundits are in shock, looking for excuses, outplayed and outthought by a better side. Oh, the Schadenfreude tastes so good to all those Munster fans, doesn't it?
How do you know he's a Munster fan?
Well, because he is. Or else he's just an anti-rugby person.
I mean, might just be a person who likes justice, and it was justice for right-minded people that La Rochelle won at the weekend, of course.
Was it? Yeah. Oh, you're loving this.
You got completely carried away with yourself, Leinster media.
Did we?
Leinster bias. Look at us in our even postcode in Dublin City.
When they put 40 points... Well, I'm an odd postcode myself, but when they put...
Humble brag.
Accidental partridge. Not so accidental. When they put 40 points on the reigning champions, who were also the reigning French champions in the semi-final, it was like, oh, we can't take this as evidence. That's not evidence. I mean, what? Sorry. That's the most recent game. I'm not allowed to use this as my starting point for analysis. No! Last game against La Rochelle.
Once retired him out.
There was no crowd last year either, was there?
Don't think so.
The La Rochelle crowd were getting absolutely praised in the papers today, but we did have an email from somebody who Don't mention my name due to the nature of my employment. I knew the Leinster fans didn't expect to be around hostile fans like we were on Saturday. I know the atmosphere at the RDS and Aviva is quite poor recently, but Saturday was like attending a soccer game. La Rochelle fans threw flags at me and other supporters for cheering on Leinster during the game. They were great at cheering on their team, but booed the names of the Leinster team called out, the kickers, anytime Sexton was on the ball and any decision against them. I would have rooted for La Rochelle in the past with the Rog connection, but definitely not now after experiencing their fans. If that's French rugby, then they bring a passionate but nasty element to the game that's not welcome.
La Rochelle. Disappointed in you.
Are you?
Thought they were good lads.
Are you disappointed? That sounds great.
Yeah.
Is that not like...
Well, also throwing a flag at someone doesn't sound like...
Throwing a flag does not sound good.
But that doesn't sound like a very, useful way of...
That was my experience with Munster fans when Munster beat Leinster that first time.
How do you throw a flag at someone? Does the flag not like...
Banging on the head with the flag.
Well, banging you on the head with the flag stick.
There was a kid banging me on the head with a Munster flag, and I turned around to the parents and I was laughing his head off.
But like I would have thought...
But there should be that rivalry.
Yeah.
The Munster fans should have booed the kickers in the penalty shootout, and maybe then there would have been no softening up. Maybe then we would have got to see who the best team in Irish rugby is.
Which of course is Leinster's B team.
Où sont tes valeurs?
I'm still just thinking about throwing a flag at someone. Like, I mean, that's just so impractical.
Well, no, it becomes a bit of a spear.
Oh yeah, maybe that if you throw it like that. I'm kind of thinking that it kind of more floats and it wouldn't really necessarily be very aerodynamic. So I think that's probably a silly way to try and injure an opponent.
All the comments from the bandwagon brigade was a 20+ win for Leinster, says Hey. La Rochelle have a doggedness, and anyone that thought they'd roll over are fools. I commented before the game that it would be a tight affair. With Rog on board, they had the edge. Delighted for La Rochelle and their supporters. When Johnny Sexton went, Leinster were rudderless, says Stephen. Bottled it, unfortunately. Absolutely gutted, says Carlo Mann. Pete St. John says the URC League is Division 2 standard. Leinster sleepwalk through it and then meet a proper team, and that's 80% Irish international team. Worrying times and the New Zealand tour looming. I think the blaming of the URC is nonsensical, to be honest. It's like it's absolutely perfect for them, and they just played Toulouse. Like, they just played Toulouse, and before that they just played Leicester. Like,
I used to buy the URC thing, but this season I think it was kind of blown out of the water by the run that Leinster are on for sure.
I really hate people sneering at others that say Leinster and Liverpool are still the best teams in Europe, says Brown. Guarantee they wouldn't bet against either of them doing it next year. To be fair, Ger, I'm not sure it's Munster fans delighting in Leinster's loss. We're all too beaten down to offer any insults at anyone. Well, it took them 24 hours, Brown, but they're all back.
Nothing else to do, like, really.
No, it's true. Damien says French rugby union fans are all like that. It's just the way they enjoy it.
Has that been your experience with French rugby fans? Bad?
I don't know. I can never get over it. We when we were in Paris in 2016, we went to interview SoFoot, the kind of hipster football magazine, and we were there for about 40 minutes, and they spent about 25 minutes of it giving out about the French rugby fans.
What were they saying?
Farmers! It's like everybody was smoking in the office. It was mad. It was like, we've just stepped back to 1972 here. But yeah, so soccer fans disliking rugby fans is a worldwide cultural phenomenon.
And is it because of the behaviour at matches, or like what's with the hate for the agricultural community?
It was just that, like, urban versus rural and rich rural specifically.
Okay.
They weren't paysans. They weren't. Wasn't the peasants who were coming down from wherever it was. I don't know. I mean, it seemed like it was a fairly reductive take, but very good crack.
So the farmers completely trolled the Leinster people at the weekend, it turns out.
Oh, I don't think they're farmers in La Rochelle. They're like...
What are they, vineyards?
Tourism.
Tourism?
Yeah. It's a small town. But it's a very nice part of the world, apparently. We're nearly 9 o'clock here. Spectacle lacking in a sport at the crossroads. Spectacle lacking in a sport at the crossroads. I did it twice. It was so good. Sports Tuesday. This is the Irish Times. They're also saying pictures of the Ireland team training. Kenny bullish about Ireland's prospects ahead of busy 4-game schedule. Like, these football matches are absolute seminal moments in the Kenny era. If he gets through this with good results, we're up and running. We're away. Like, Dan McDonnell makes the point that everybody showed up. I didn't think it would blow up. This is Callum Robinson talking about being vaccinated or not. That time that he then went on to score 5 goals. Maybe we should get him involved in some controversy every time, because it definitely inspired him. A long time coming as Dawson hits gold standard. Gabriel Dawson walked through the doors of Olympic Boxing Club in Galway at the age of 16. His prowess in the ring was already well known in the city. He's 22 and I think, where does it say he's a middleweight? Is he a middleweight? This is like very exciting. A 22-year-old middleweight who is beating his English counterpart at this stage. Fingers crossed that there's a good long professional career ahead of him as well. Safety first. Civil unrest in Armenia has FAI on alert, so the FAI have sent an advanced security team to Armenia to ensure the safety of the Irish squad when they arrive in Yerevan tomorrow. And Munster didn't show up against Leinster. This is Conor Murray talking about the team not showing up against, was it Leinster's third team? Michael Owen's daughter is in
Love Island.
Yeah. Does that give you an excuse to watch it? Do you need an excuse?
Don't need an excuse to watch it.
No.
To be honest, just good highbrow television. When does it start?
I don't know. Mane's path is clear. Sadio Mane's moved a step closer to leaving Liverpool for Bayern after Lewandowski confirmed he's quitting. He's not really. He says he wants to leave, but he has a contract. Oliver Kahn pissed off, saying, no, you can't. You're going to have to honour your contract. You're not serious. Klopp blamed for final chaos. There were one of the guys in our travelling party was offered a fake ticket. He was told, this is fake, but it'll more than likely get you in. And it was 50 quid.
Wow. You take that gamble, don't you?
Don't know if you do. I mean...
Did he take the gamble?
No, he didn't. Knowing that you're going into like French riot police, the body armour is like kind of armadillo style.
Mm-hmm.
Very impressive / intimidating. I would not try and squeeze into a stadium with a fake ticket. Maybe that's just me on.
No, but it's like, I mean, if you're just taking
you were like, yes.
If we're just taking this to the nth degree here, you're not saying, you're pretending that you got screwed over by somebody when you produced that fake ticket.
Oh yeah, I mean,
oh no,
you're a good actor.
I guess spending 50 quid on that would be utterly stupid, given you could just produce one yourself for free.
Well, yeah. Maybe you couldn't.
I don't know. You're saying they looked identical to the real tickets?
So the real tickets didn't seem to look like tickets.
Okay.
That was listening to what Conor Moore was saying. Chelsea win the Super Bowl. Todd Burley. We haven't we're
going with Bowley, I think.
Yeah, but it looks funny, so we should. Anyway, Rog is on track to top job. Rob Kearney insists the IRFU don't need to bring Ronan O'Gara home to a top provincial job before handing him the Ireland hot seat. But Paul O'Connell's going to be the next Ireland manager, coach.
You think?
Well, that's what he's there for, right?
What about the Leinster duo, in particular Leo Cullen? Is that not what he's there for?
Well, Leo's in the frame for the CEO job at Leinster.
Okay, so that would obviously be a different path entirely.
Yeah.
In the frame, as in he wants that job?
Don't know. Oh, like as in has been linked with heavily. There's a competition for that job.
Right. What's a better job, the CEO of Leinster or the head coach of Ireland?
Well, which is the more sustainable job?
Yeah. That probably comes into which is the better job as well, does it, from his
perhaps
point of view?
Stephen Kenny, we can hit new highs. I don't know. Give me the odds on Ronan O'Gara as an international head coach. What's the favourite? Which job is the favourite? If you were making up, so skip not his next job, but which is the international job that Ronan O'Gara is most likely to get?
Ireland.
Second?
England.
See, I think
maybe
that's
like
wrong.
France.
That's what I think. I think that O'Gara could stay at La Rochelle for another 3 or 4 years through this World Cup cycle, and then he's going to have his pick of jobs. And that France job could be available.
Yeah, so you get to the 2023 Rugby World Cup, and then after France win the trophy, they start looking for the successor, and O'Gara's like, I'll see out the season.
Or even it's like, it could be the middle of that, or maybe like if France win the World Cup, do they just keep the coaching ticket in place for a while? Or does everybody go, right, job done here, let's get out of here while we get going while the going's good?
Well, quite possibly. It's a home World Cup, it feels like the end of something rather than the start of something. And that could be the time to come in. I think that Ireland would probably want to be on high enough alert. Munster are going to want to have a plan here for O'Gara as well. I'm not saying they'd be able to get him, but they're certainly going to be thinking about what they can do to attract him to the province at some point down the line.
Have you heard about the Andy Carroll story?
No.
Andy Carroll's on a stag weekend. The picture emerges of Andy and a female Now, Andy's asleep in his bed and his picture gets out. But the woman in the picture insists that Andy Carroll, true to form, didn't score. That's how the Sun are reporting it this morning. Sorry, Billy, I know how it looks, but we didn't have sex. But Taylor, 27, insists the striker, as frustrated fans know well, did not score that night. And the back page, tab of the morning to you. Obafemi starting. Kenny, Swan Star will sink or swim. He doesn't quite say sink or swim, but the swan's a bird and it floats on the water. So that's what the Stephen Kenny's saying. No, he's ready to go. He's not here just to make up the number and see how we do things. It's like he's here to play because he's actually, our most informed striker at the moment.
Yeah, and I think it looks like he's going to be well within a chance of starting that first game against Armenia. And his club form, as you say, has been so good. It's been better than everybody else in that Ireland squad at attack and at a level that's above some of those strikers as well. So it's Obafemi's time. If he starts well, the jersey will be his to lose then.
Liverpool call for French to apologise. Fury over claims 40,000 fans had fake tickets. UEFA to investigate events that marred final. City chased 2 more signings and 18,000 Lords tickets unsold. Manchester City chairman Khaldoun Al-Mubarak has said the Premier League champions will sign 2 more players this summer. He didn't name them, but it's the Brighton left back and Calvin Phillips that they've been linked with.
Cucurella, is it?
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be good additions to the squad. Like, it does feel that I do think that Manchester City do need to bolster in defence, potentially even in the heart of their defence. They might be taking a bit of a risk on everybody being fit again next season, but the hairy moment they endured at the last day of the season was because Fernandinho was manning the centre of their defence. So I don't know, maybe if they sign Cucurella, they can just shift somebody in and they don't have to have. I know Stones was playing on the other side of the defence, but you wouldn't have to have Stones shift over to a full back position when you're in a bit of injury trouble. So
do they really not have like a right back? I mean, every club team in Ireland has like 5 right backs.
Yeah. I don't know. It did seem that they were quite shorn, but that was a situation for a lot of the season where they were kind of depending on 14, 15 players of absolute quality. Like, you can't really criticise their depth when the 3 substitutes they're bringing on in the Premier League every week were absolute top class players. But I still think they could do with a couple of more players. Like, we're talking about just such a high ceiling and such a high margin of error for this Manchester City team. So you're kind of looking towards perfection with that squad.
Nadal anger at Djokovic start time. So Rafa Nadal wanted the game to be on earlier because he felt like the higher temperature would be better for his chances of victory, whereas this actually kind of levels things up a little bit. So we think the game's going to start around 8.
Okay, right. I think that's a good box office time. I think as Colin was saying earlier, it could be something that goes well into the night and that could be a bit of a pain for people, but like, this will have a massive global audience. If it does go late into the night, you've got a massive US audience then clocking on to watch this as well. So I think it could be absolutely one of the early highlights of the sports summer.
Alright, we're going to talk with Billy O'Loughlin, the Longford football manager, next.
OTB AM on OTB Sports Radio, Ireland's first and only sports radio station.
Marginal gains, XG, top speed, recovery, what's it all about? Want to improve but don't know where to start? With more data than ever now available, OTB Sports have teamed up with Whoop to cut through the noise and help you raise your game, no matter the sport. OTB Sports are delivering the metrics that matter. Meaningful metrics in partnership with Whoop, the personalised digital fitness and health coach that helps you unlock your inner potential. See whoop.com for more. Follow OTB Sports social channels for the best insights and stats this season.
The Football Pod with Paddy Andrews and James O'Donoghue is heading west and they want you to join them. Paddy, James and host Tommy Rooney are Castlebar bound on Thursday, June 2nd. And just announced to be joining them on stage is the Mayo legend Keith Higgins. They'll relive old Dublin, Kerry and Mayo battles at Croker and beyond, as well as analysing Championship 2022. That's the Football Pod at the Royal TF Castlebar. Tickets are €20 plus booking fees. Get yours now at otbsports.com/events.
With prices from only €289 for fully comprehensive car insurance, everyone's making the jump to getsetgo.ie. New business policies only. Prices subject to minimum premiums. T's and C's apply. MCL Insurance Services Limited Trading is getsetgo.ie is regulated by the Central Bank of Ireland.
OTB AM
with Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating bar.
Right, you're very welcome back. If you want to get in touch this afternoon, you can get us on 0879 180 180, or of course you can always use the hashtag OTBAM either if that's how you want to get in touch. And obviously the easiest and handiest way these days to get in touch with us is by talking to us on our YouTube channel. And I'm delighted to say Billy O'Loughlin, the Longford Gaelic football manager, is with us this morning to talk to us about his experience of the Tailteann Cup and indeed the Leinster Championship as well. Billy, first off, commiserations. It was a fairly close run thing at the weekend in the game against Fermanagh. How are you feeling after that now?
Yeah, look, as the dust settled, I suppose you're probably disappointed having been beaten in the end, and with such a tight and sharp finish. I suppose it made it that little bit more disappointing, when the final whistle went. But in terms of experience and in general about the Tailteann Cup, it was absolutely fantastic, and the players were delighted to be able to play in a competition that gave them some real competitive balance, and granted it was a knockout game and I know it's going to be changed to round robin next year, which is fantastic that the players will get more games against teams of an equal standing, which I think is the best way to develop players and get them to the next level. Certainly from our point of view, we were very, very happy to take part in it, and we've had a really big push for the Tailteann Cup, and there was very little drop off. One or two lads had gone to America, and that directly after the league. But I think there was probably more of an emphasis from the start of the year, certainly from my point of view, that the Tailteann Cup was something that we could, genuinely compete in, and it's a competition that I think going forward has great potential. Certainly has great potential anyway.
What stage of the cycle are you at with Longford? How long are you there, and what's your plan into the future?
Yeah, well, I was the last manager, I think, in and probably, I suppose, surprised a lot of people by getting the job. But I think Albert Cooney has been very forward thinking, and he wanted someone that was a bit younger in their careers, and someone that I suppose was going to get people. I got people around me that were going to think outside the box, and that the likes of Michael Hannon and Paul Brady and that. So look, we started very late in December, and I made my feelings clear with Albert on the Leinster Championship and things like that from the start. And I thought that for Longford to develop with the young players that we have, the league was of vital importance to us. And I think that staying up in Division 3 was absolutely huge, because make no bones about it, Longford played Meath in the Championship in 2021, and they were beaten quite heavily. I think it was 4-22 to 12 points, and that's not good for anyone from a smaller county, and certainly with such a small pool of players in Longford. We had to start this year without 6 of those forwards. They weren't on the panel; they wouldn't come in for one reason or another. And I spoke to most of them, and very courteous lads, and they explained to me that the merits of playing with Longford, and the challenges of playing with Longford, and a lot of them are based on the eastern board up in Dublin and in Galway and that. And as I made my feelings clear, I suppose the carrot at the end of the stick has always been the Leinster Championship, and that's not very attractive anymore to players that are working at at such a high level jobs and are putting such commitment into their football as well. So that has been difficult, I suppose, from that point of view. But we kind of took the bull by the horns early doors and just stuck the younger guys in there, the 19, 18, 19, 20-year-olds. And I think we finished the game the other day against Fermanagh with 4 20-year-olds and 2 19-year-olds playing. So I'm not sure if there's any other county in Ireland with that turnover of players, but it's absolutely super that they got to experience the Tailteann Cup and in an environment, with Saturday evening against Fermanagh, and it was just brilliant. It was such a close game. It was very, setup was quite defensive, and it was, a real game of attrition right to the wire, and to get those young lads in that environment was marvellous, and it serves them an awful lot better than having to go up and play in Croke Park, maybe having won one game and then to be, subjected to, I suppose, a team who were much further down the line, like a Dublin or a Kildare. So from that point of view, it has been great. It has been difficult up and down, and we've had an up and down, I suppose, league But staying in the Division 3 was super. And then, you know, we really put a big push for the Tailteann Cup. And look, it was knockout, wasn't to be, but overall a thoroughly enjoyable experience.
I'll talk to you about the players who are with you and plans for the future in a moment. Just to go back, because we sometimes get accused of having an agenda when it comes to this, but the agenda is based on listening to people like you who are managing counties and finding it difficult to convince players to play. So can we just go back to that? Because when you're talking to the 6 lads who aren't playing, it's specifically, or one of the things that they talk about is not being humiliated in Croke Park in the Leinster Championship. Is that accurate for me to say that?
They wouldn't specifically say that, but look, in a roundabout way, it's something that would be, you know, at the back of their minds, and definitely, I know from past experiences with nearly all counties in Leinster that, you know, apart from Dublin, really that they've shipped, you know, numerous drubbings, I suppose, if you like, at the hands of teams that would be, you know, further down the path, as I'd like to say. But it's definitely a concern. And look, there's such a small playing pool in Longford, and you know, they really have been punching above their weight, you know, in terms of staying in Division 3 for the last 7 or 8 years. But it's a worry that players would be turned away from the game that they've been playing since they're young lads, and they're often against playing with their inter-county team because of the, you know, the hard slog and the 6-month commitment for a competition that really, you know, there's no competitive balance there. And you know, the Leinster Council are you know, it's just they're serving up a competition for players that, you know, it's not meaningful for them really. And you know, when you weigh it up in terms of ratios to Leinster Championship games to 6 months of training, you know, is that something that they're going to do? No, it's not. Is the Tailteann Cup next year with a group stage and a round robin, is that something that players can aspire to win, and you know, and sense of achievement there if you went well in it and got a run in it? Absolutely, you know. And I think that is something that's a worry. But you know, hopefully now with the Tailteann Cup, you know, we will be able to drum up enough support to get some of these guys in, because the clubs in Longford have been absolutely fantastic, and you know, there's some great strong clubs in Longford, as you know, Kilo and Mullinachta and Dramard, and you know, all these teams are producing fantastic players. And it's just sometimes, you know, the players are opting off the panel, and that is difficult, and it really is difficult to throw 4 or 5 19, 20-year-olds into a starting forward line against a seasoned team like Fermanagh, let alone, you know, Fermanagh who are at our level, but let alone a Division 1 team that you might have to play in the Leinster Championship. So look, it is a concern, and I think that the Tailteann Cup is definitely a building blocks, or it's a step towards enticing these guys in. And I think for 2023, you know, we're probably going to be, you know, we'll be on the front foot in terms of you know, preparing the team with getting those lads in.
So where does that leave the Leinster Championship in your plans for 2023?
Well, look, judging by the schedule of games that's going to be laid on for us next year, you've an Aburn Cup, which would be probably in around early January in the muck and rain, and then you've a Division 3 competition, which is so evenly balanced and so competitive next year with Down and Offaly and Cavan and Tipperary in it. So look, that will be of utmost importance to Longford to compete in that, and you know, it's very enjoyable. Those games are really, really enjoyable. And you know, look, we probably lost more than we won this year, but it was really, really enjoyable. And I think the players are coming around to recognising that is probably the most important competition, followed closely next year by the Tailteann Cup and group stages and group games in the summer months, hopefully in May and June, if they push it out that far. That's where players want to be playing. Like, players are crying out to play games in the summertime that have, you know, the importance of them, that they are, you know, of equally balanced and competitive. And the Leinster Championship would be so further down the line for us next year. And I think the Leinster Championship is actually sandwiched in between the league and the Tailteann Cup. So, you know, they're not making things easy for themselves in terms of attendances. And like, for example, like I remember being on the sideline, you know, in 2005 with Laois when they were beaten by Dublin. There was 82,000 at it. And you know, last week's Leinster final probably had 34 or 5,000 at it. So people are voting with their feet, and it's replicated throughout the early rounds of the Leinster Championship. I think there was 2,900 people at a local derby between Longford and Westmeath, and you go back even, I remember Laois and Carlow playing with the Phantom Pint in 1997. There was about 18 or 19,000 in Portlaoise. So, if that doesn't speak volumes as to where the Leinster Championship is, I don't really know what will.
Do you see any point in the Leinster Football Championship for Longford anymore?
Certainly for smaller teams, the first round can usually be very competitive, and you'll get a win every now and again, against a larger fish, if you like, and Longford have done it in the past and have certainly competed. They drew with Kildare a couple of years ago. They beat Meath in 2018, and Carlow have had a great victory over the last couple of years against Kildare and that. But then to go out the following week, then it's very difficult, with the probably strength and depth in the panel to go and compete with a Division 1 team. It's very, very difficult, and now that the Tailteann Cup is there, I think that the emphasis needs to be more so on competing at that level rather than the Leinster Championship. Look, I mean, Longford have been to 2 Leinster finals in 137 years of play in 60, 65 and 68. And look, that's not a good ratio, I suppose, for any county, really. And look, if you go down through it, with the Wicklow's and the Carlows and even Westmeaths have been to very few finals, and that Laois, Louds, so it's the way it is at the moment. I think there has been one winner of the Leinster Championship. There've been 17 of the last 18 have been by Dublin. So look, is that competitive? I'm not so sure.
Do you think we're getting to a point where the Longfords of the world, the Carlows of the world might just decide what's the point in us being part of this competition anymore? Do you think, for example, Longford should be part of the competition next year?
Yeah, look, they're obviously going to run the competition again next year and have done for since its inception, I suppose. And it's just, is it fit for purpose? I think I said back in January after one of our Burn Cup games against Dublin, where we were very competitive, and it was in the wind and the rain and down in Longford to get Dublin down there, and it was a competitive game, and that's probably where you deserve your shot at the bigger counties in the early pre-season tournaments, as opposed to now where we're just on a different graph, if you like. So we'll certainly compete in it, and as I said, this year our Westmeath game in the championship was a cup final for us, and we were hoping to to get one over on them again, as we did in the league. But now that, as I said, now that the inception of the Tailteann Cup is there, I think that the focus, certainly from a player's point of view, the likes of Darren Gallagher and Paddy Collum and Mickey Quinn, of course, these boys have spoken out in the dressing room after our Westmeath game that the Tailteann Cup was something that they could achieve, that they could go on and potentially win at some stage throughout their careers. And given it has got reasonably good publicity in the last while, certainly from the players, that can be a good thing. But the Leinster Championship, I think, the likes of your Mick Reynolds and Pat Teans and these guys, it's the walls are closing in, I would say, on it, in terms of it being, it staying competitive, because it just hasn't been that way.
It's kind of pointless at this stage.
It's certainly, from a point of view of preparing a team for us, it has little to no importance in terms of what we can achieve and what we can win. And I think that our Division 3 is just, it's a phenomenal competition that we play in. It's going to be phenomenally difficult to try and compete and stay in that next year. And that's what players want. Players are getting 7 unbelievably tough games in a competition that's of huge importance to us. And it's of great significance that the guys can develop in these competitions, and particularly when you have such young players that we've been using, the Jack Duggans and the Keelan McGanns and these guys, that they're 19, 20 years of age, and preparing them in a Division 3 with competitive games is just it makes more sense than the drubbings that you might receive later down the line in the Leinster.
The one thing about the league, while it's a brilliant competition, we are not guaranteed in February, March and April good quality weather. And not guaranteed weather at any time in Ireland, you have to say, but certainly the weather, at least in summer, the ground is a bit better, and it has an opportunity to dry out, and we might get a bit of sunshine.
Yeah, absolutely.
But like if you think back to some of those league weekends, the wind was howling and the rain was lashing and the cameras needed wiped and we couldn't really see what was going on in some of them. But still the games were all fairly close in all four divisions.
They were unbelievably competitive. Like it was, look, my first experience, I suppose, as with the management team, with Mickey Hannon and Paul Brady and the likes, and we were just, we stated that after every game that we were in the game in all 7 games that we played, and we were competitive in all of them. We won a couple of them, drew one of them, and really, if you look back over some of the video analysis that we were doing, like the wind and the rain, and the conditions are just atrocious. And like Longford played 4 competitive games in January, in the last 3 weeks of January, and in June, July, and August we'll play none. And that's incredible. You look at the League of Ireland at the moment. I think attendances are up 52% on what they were in 2019, because the games are competitive. They're playing in sunshine. People like bringing their families to games where the weather is great. They're not going to go to games in muck and dirt in January and February. Like it's the January should be set aside for Sigerson, which is a fantastic competition, and then they should start the pre-season towards the end of February. Like there's February, March, April, May, June months there that the weather is a little bit better, but particularly in May and June where like Longford have no game in June now, no competitive championship game in June, where they had 4 competitive games in January. That just doesn't make sense whatsoever,
Even with the round robin next year, will you have games in June if the round robin kicks in?
Yeah, I hope so. I hope it's pushed back into June and that, because the club championships certainly here in Laois don't start till the end of July and August, and they don't start till August in Longford either. So, players are not playing championship now with their club or their county in June and July. And that has to be looked at. So it's players, look, from being in the dressing room and with Longford this year, players are screaming out for games and competitive games, and that's all they want. They're amateur players. They're travelling up 2 and 3 nights a week from Dublin in traffic, in rain, and you name it, and just the sheer joy that they get from competing in games, and particularly the other day, to watch that Tailteann Cup game the other day with Fermanagh and Longford go right down to the wire, and seeing Iarla O'Sullivan in full flow, and Ultan Kelm for Fermanagh, really a sight to behold, the speed of them, and the level of enjoyment that the Fermanagh guys got from winning the game, and that's something that we want to be part of. But it's over now for a lot of the counties, and even I'm close to Carlow here, and seeing Carlow winning beating Tipperary in perfect conditions in Dr. Cullen last weekend. That is exactly what football for the lower teams in Division 3 and 4 is about, and hopefully now with the Tailteann Cup we'll get more games, and more competitive games will bring people to stadiums, to grounds around the country. What we're doing at the moment in Leinster is we're half selling out, a quarter selling out Croke Park, whereas these Tailteann Cup games around the country, given time, will start to increase in attendances and fill out grounds, and you'll have really, look at Leitrim and Sligo this weekend, or next weekend, whenever it's on. This weekend we'll have a great crowd at Fermanagh and Cavan will have a great crowd at it. That's exactly what people want. It's what players want. But yet, we're being served up this Leinster Championship, which it is no good for any certainly the 3 and 4, the Division 3 and 4 counties anyway.
It turns out it's not that good for the Division 1 and Division 2 teams either. It just doesn't work. Is there a world? Is there any world in which you guys wouldn't take part, and get together with the counties on your same level and say, what's the point of this, lads? This is a waste of our time. We'd be as well playing challenges against each other and not taking part in this.
Yeah, I think that's certainly something that I have discussed. Maybe a lot of purists and traditionalists in the GAA, and certainly in the smaller counties always like the big crack at the big boys, but it's not the same anymore. It's a semi-professional set up in most counties, and the further up the divisions you go, the more professional really it gets. And I think it's very naive of certain traditionalists in a lot of counties to think otherwise. And Albert Cooney, I think for me, I've spoken at length with him about would there be any point in kind of not competing in the Leinster Championship next year, and obviously enough it's probably a bit of a way out there opinion on it, but it's the Tailteann Cup will serve us great value next year, getting more games in it. So look, the Leinster will probably be in the Leinster Championship next year, and we'll treat it like we did this year as a kind of a cup final, if you like. But in terms of developing our younger players from Longford, it's all about the league and the Tailteann Cup.
That's interesting, Billy. You've actually had the idea of not competing in the Leinster Championship, because I think it's the first time we've ever heard a manager who is at intercounty level say this does not do us any good. And I'm thinking about what a world would look like if we pulled out of it, and how that might actually make our team better. Isn't that a remarkable scenario we find ourselves in, where in 2022 you think that actually the best thing for you is not to take part in the scheduled official competition? Like, it does seem radical, but it also, listening to you for the last 15 minutes, it also seems completely logical.
Yeah, look, it's certainly sentiments that look, it's at the end of the day, it's only my opinion, but I have spoken at length with the players about what's important for us to develop, and I think that the competitive nature of sport means that players are very keen to achieve and develop, and I don't think they get that in the Leinster Championship. And where we go with the Leinster Championship from here is an unknown, but I think it's sandwiched, as I said, it's sandwiched in between two very competitive competitions for us next year. So look, I'm not going to say that we'll entirely be rooting for pulling out of it, but it's in terms of importance, it's down the list.
Do you talk to any other intercounty managers about this as well? Is there is this something that if there was an intercounty manager WhatsApp group and you put in, here lads, listen, we don't think this is any good, what would the response be like?
Yeah, look, I don't know if they'd be as open and as honest as that, but certainly the statistics don't lie on the end product of the Leinster Championship, and there's been one winner in the last, Dublin have won it 17 out of 18 years. So look, I'm sure if you asked any of the Dublin players, not that you'd get much of an answer, but I think that they would rather be playing in a competition as well, where they're getting games week in, week out, where nail biting close encounters, and it's just that's not something that's happening at the moment, and that's evident from all quarters that you can see that. So managers are any of the managers that I've spoken to when we've played challenge games or anything like that, they're very, very competitive guys, and rightly so. And even the likes of Tipperary winning a couple of years ago and Cavan winning a couple of years ago, and look, that's not for me to make a call on that. That's Munster and Ulster. I'm just talking from a Longford point of view, and how we can develop is what's important to us.
Yeah, and they did win in COVID years as well in wintertime. So it's not like it was a normal summertime championship, and not to diminish what their achievements at all, because obviously everybody's going through the same things, but it was the complete outlier. And if we're going to make the rules based on complete outliers, once in a blue moon, once in a 40 year, once in 100 years, in some instances, then we're not really designing competitions to get the most from all of the counties, to give everybody the opportunity to have their best players playing for the same amount of games over the course of the year. And then we can begin to judge, where should the money go to help? Where does the coaching need to go? Where do we need to invest in urban areas? Where do we need to make sure that rural clubs are being supported to keep them going? We can begin to make proper long-term plans if we actually had the competition structures in place. Look, I don't want to rehash the proposal B. We argued till we were blue in the face. This is the way forward. Give it a chance, see what happens, take a risk, and we got shot down because, well, sure, those players are going to be moving on in a couple of years anyway. Like, the Tailteann Cup is a little bit of a halfway house, but we still have, in the middle of summer, there's going to be a Munster final, and there's going to be a Leinster football final, and fewer and fewer people are going to go to those games. It now turns out the counties aren't even that interested. I'm delighted you've been so honest about it, because it's hard to get people on the record to say this doesn't matter anymore. This matters and this matters, and we all know the league is the best competition we have. Like, imagine if the league was being played in summertime now. Imagine if you were going down to the last round with something on the line in the league. Like, you'd be filling. People would be coming to watch you training.
Yeah, exactly. And look, our league went down to the last game at Laois, and it was a very intense encounter. But it was winner take all on the day, and that sort of scenario is what's really needed in terms of summer football. And I don't think I think if you asked a Dublin fan honestly, going to these games, these Leinster Championship games, like they played Wexford and Meath and Kildare. Are they getting value for their money to go to Croke Park to watch in a half-empty stadium, to watch, them in cruise control? And look, this isn't today or yesterday. This has been like this since 2005 nearly, So, something will really have to be done about it. But, from our point of view, that's just the way it is. And we spoke, as I said, we spoke with the players, and the players are of utmost importance, certainly to me and the management, that we want to see what these guys want, and they're the guys that are putting the time and effort in, and they're the guys that the people of Longford will be going to see. So what is it they want, and what they've been screaming out, that they're very keen to play more of these games, and look, the proposal B was an absolute no-brainer, and there's probably no need to rehash that argument again, but it really was. It was an open goal, and certainly from Division 3 and 4 counties, it would have led to summer football, championship football, and a pathway of progression where you can get your day in the sun against your Kildares and Dublins and Kerrys, and that if you won your league championships, if you like. So it's, from a revenue point of view, I think the GAA are selling themselves short, because people are just they're voting with their feet, and they're not paying for these tickets to come in and watch these I suppose dead rubbers, if you like, until it gets to the business end. And look, the business end of the year, when you see Dublin and Kerry and Tyrone and all these teams in full flow, it's absolutely fantastic. It's an unbelievably brilliant marketable product that people go and see, but we're just not getting enough competition, and that's the problem with the Leinster Championship. And it's disappointing, because I've been going to Leinster Championship games since I was a child, and it just doesn't have that same buzz about it that it had, and the players, I think the players are aware of that as well, and it's important to be real, to be realistic about where we sit at the moment with the Leinster Championship. And we're delighted that there is a Tailteann Cup there for us to compete in next year.
Billy, great stuff. It's really interesting to hear somebody who's at the coalface, who talks to the players, and who's a very passionate and very clear and logical advocate for them, because I think it's important that your voice is heard in all this as well. Commiserations on the exit, and I'm looking forward to what you do next year with a full pre-season behind you as well. Thanks a million.
Cheers, thanks, sir.
It's Billy O'Loughlin there, the manager of the Longford Gaelic football team. I think somebody's going to have to take radical action, and if it comes from the Longfords and Carlos of the world by saying we're not going to take part in the Leinster Championship, then maybe that might be something that starts a conversation. But hopefully that starts a debate about what the future is, and we start talking about these things as opposed to how boring the Ulster football final was. OTB AM is brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. Here's what's on OTB Sports Radio today. Ronnie Delaney from 1 o'clock, Dadcast from 3, Packy Bonner, a career retrospective of 4, OTB Gold is Michael Rasmussen on doping, and 7 o'clock live tonight, Joe and the lads. A reminder, the football pod with Paddy Andrews, James O'Donoghue and Tommy is live at the Royal Theatre in Castlebar on Thursday, June the 2nd. Tickets are available on Ticketmaster or otbsports.com/events. We'll leave you with some Pat Nevin, back from 7:30 tomorrow. Good luck.
Pat Nevin is with us on the line, as is always the case on a Monday. Pat, how you doing?
Very well indeed.
We've talked a lot about the shambles outside the stadium. Haven't really talked about the football. I'm sure the shambles outside the stadium caught your eye, though. It was pretty grim, so I might get a brief word from you on what you made of it all.
The shambles did not shock me. At the Champions League final last season in Porto, mess, just a mess, and they got away with it. And I've been at many games now that UEFA have organised, and I can't believe, in comparison to the way that is organised in the Premier League, they come over and take over games, and it's just rubbish in comparison. If there's going to be trouble, that's the games that are going to be trouble at. The Premier League games, much less so. Certainly things that are organised by groups that organise it all the time and know how to do it week in, week out. So, there was many problems, and I'm sure it's not a simplistic thing of just one problem. I'm sure, there was the ticketing problem, there was the fake ticketing problem, there was the fact that tickets, even the good ones, weren't being shown, there were strikes, etc. There was organised chaos by some young Parisians as well. So there's a whole bunch of things going on. But it just doesn't surprise me because, when things go wrong, quite often UEFA's organisation's involved in it, or disorganisation.
As for matters on the field, a 14th European Cup for Real Madrid. They have beaten PSG, Chelsea, Manchester City, Liverpool. It is hard to think of any team which has come through a more difficult run to win the title, and largely written off at every turn as well. And then for Liverpool this season, which seems so destined for a fair portion of it for something really extraordinary, has hollowed out slightly. So let's talk about the game then. Who did you fancy in advance?
In advance, I'd just go for the best team with the best players, and if they play at their best to win, and that would have been Liverpool for me. Yeah. I just thought, player for player, if they can bring their A game, they win the game. And I still think that would have been the case had they played well, but not necessarily their A game. Salah was good, but not at his absolutely best. And they were quite unlucky on a few occasions as well. But that's the deal. That's the gig when you've got Champions League finals. It quite often happens. I'm looking back at it now and thinking, had we been talking about Manchester City as winners of the competition, we wouldn't be surprised. Liverpool wouldn't be surprised. Real Madrid have won it, and well done, and no negativity from me towards them. But they're not the great Real Madrid teams of the past. It's not one of the fabulous teams. And for that, I think Liverpool will be gutted because, they knew they had a chance to win it, and they certainly did have chances to win it, but you find a way. And Ancelotti's quite good at that, isn't he? And he sees the weakness. And everybody has known all season, and probably for a couple of seasons, where Liverpool's weakness is. The two fullbacks push on, and there's a gap behind one of the fullbacks. And the most obvious one they usually aim for actually is Trent Alexander-Arnold. The reason being for that is the right centre-back, although the big man played well, but Van Dijk, left centre-back, covers really, really well, doesn't he? But the right centre-back doesn't cover quite as well. Whoever it is, whichever one they choose, and Trent Alexander is almost always gone, and there's a gap in there. Now, it's not undeliberate. They know what they're doing. But every team that plays against them knows that's where the gap is. And it turned out to be their Achilles heel on the right. Unfortunate for them.
Yeah. On the goal itself, it's brilliant play Modric, because Real Madrid didn't really seem all that interested in being brave on the ball at all in the first half. And then Modric decides to insist on playing a good pass forward under a lot of pressure and does so. The thing about Alexander-Arnold that would worry you is that he does steal a glance at Vinicius as the move is beginning. So he absolutely 100% knows Vinicius Jr. is outside him as the play is developing and never looks again. I said it yesterday to Ray Houghton. He's getting a bit old for that now. That's so fundamental, that's worrying.
Yes, unless your manager said your defending's slightly secondary. We'll cover in front of you. When Henderson's usually the guy that covers that area, so if he's gone or Robertson's gone, you've got a certain midfielder who has to see the danger and cover it. But when you play at that standard they played it at, and also with the technique that they've got when they use it, there was some of the more intricate moves that they built out from, because Liverpool did well to close down for 60, 70 minutes, and then it opened out a lot, and then Real Madrid were able to then play their better technical passing game. But if you do that against players such as, the Modric's, etc., they'll find the gap. They'll find out where the weakness is, and they'll eventually get it. And yeah, it was a brilliant move, but there were a number of brilliant moves they played out from the back. And given those due, as time went on in the game, and it wasn't at the start of the game, but as time went on in the game, when Liverpool couldn't quite keep up that level of pressure, they did pass through them quite a few times, and it got easier and easier. And you just got to think that Ancelotti knew that. But I still applaud Liverpool to some degree, or to a large degree, because that's the game, that's the gig. They want the fullbacks to go forward and create. And the vast majority of times, they will create more than they lose. Trent Alexander-Arnold will create more than goals that he gives away. So will Robertson. And you take that chance sometimes, don't you?
Because for a lot of the first half in particular, it worked really well there for Liverpool. Alexander-Arnold is pushed forward. Konate is ragdolling Vinicius Jr. and Liverpool have an extra man forward. Konate had a fantastic game, and Alexander-Arnold's further up the pitch and very involved. Often his delivery, ironically, of all things, let him down a touch at times. So you've no problem with that dynamic. But where the goal came from, that's not a case of Alexander-Arnold being too far forward. That's just like bread and butter of being a right back. That scenario is just one you have to deal with in a fairly uncomplicated fashion. Like I would anticipate you've been in Vinicius Junior's position many times and longing for that ball to come in. But a good right back is aware of you and will sniff out the danger.
I suppose that's why you're thinking in the terms that certain modern managers think, which is different from managers in the past. Managers in the past, it's look, get that defensive thing done. You always cover around that side. You've always get right there first, and then you can break from all that sort of stuff, which is exactly how I would expect a defender to defend, and how I would have expected Trent Alexander-Arnold to defend in that occasion. It may well be that his managers told him that's what you do when you're in that situation. But there is always that wee bit in the back of your mind that he's always been told to try and get a wee bit forward, get a little run on a player, but you don't leave players like Vinicius Junior on their own with a bit of space, being wrong side. You just don't do it. And so I would agree with your contention that without wanting to abuse Trent Alexander-Arnold, without wanting, because I don't want to, because it's not for any other reason than he is amazing what he gives you going forward. And it's a bit like, sometimes you hear Pep after they've got beat Manchester City, and you can tell he doesn't care. You can tell, no, we did everything right. There will be a certain percentage of matches that you do all the things we want you to do, but sometimes it doesn't work. And if we are negative and don't play the way we always want to play, then we'll not get the benefits of those other 19 out of 20 games. And there's a wee bit of that with Trent Alexander-Arnold as well, where, okay, we're telling you to go. And then the one time you don't go, we say, well, what were you doing? I kind of get it. But, he should have been there. And in the end, he'll know himself he should have been there. And if he could rewind time, he would be there.
I guess the killer is in that instance as well. I mean, he was there. He was goal side. He was in a fine position, just didn't react.
He's wrong angle to look, isn't he?
Yeah. The predicament for Alexander-Arnold, I suppose, is that he would quite like to be at the World Cup in Qatar. And Gareth Southgate is pretty much on the record as saying that he believes these major tournaments are won primarily and initially with a stingy defence, and therefore that's why Trent hasn't featured. And I'm sure it crossed Alexander-Arnold's mind in the last 24 hours. That's another mark against me in the Southgate ledger.
Yeah, and that's why you look at Walker, and in a way that might count against Reece James as well. Reece James is a fabulous fullback. I mean, absolutely fabulous defender, but he's never actually asked to play there very often. He's usually asked to play that little bit further forward and do what Trent does, but in a different system, as a wide man in a forward midfield. But if you're the England manager and you think, right, we're going to be stingy, so who which one do you go with? And you probably go for the more organised, normal defender. And that actually might work against Reece James, and it might work against Trent Alexander-Arnold. I would argue that, that kind of doesn't always win you World Cups, etc., or Euros and things like that, because these days the attacking teams are generally winning most things. Yeah. Generally winning most things. So I would hope, and I actually thought that was to some degree, letdown in the Euros, England. You know, they weren't brave enough to say, right, we're as good as you lot, we'll take you on, we'll stand toe-to-toe, and we can attack more. I think that was his downfall then. And if I was him, I would be saying, no, look, we need to go for it a bit more.
Yeah. Look at the goal Luke Shaw scores in the first minute. Last time he ventured forward all game. I mean, if Kieran Trippier is lining up for England in a World Cup semi-final, then frankly, I don't know.
Well, but I completely agree, but then they did get quite close in the Euros. You know, they did get very, very close. So it is one of those things. But in the modern game, at the moment, currently where we are, generally the attacking teams are winning out in the end.
And I suppose one of the reasons Van Dijk couldn't press Valverde with all that much intent for the cross is Carvajal's bombing up outside him, and so that's what it gets you. So, exactly. What do you say of Liverpool here? Like, there've been some games of late, like Spurs at home, where it felt maybe they're running out of ideas when it came to breaking down deep line defence, and so maybe that applies to Saturday. But at the same time, Pat, 24 shots is 24 shots.
Yeah, and we do remember the keeper had quite a good game, didn't he? Oh. It was world class, wasn't it, for Courtois? Yeah. I mean, generally, maybe any other keeper in the goal might not have kept him out. You know, any other keeper. Yeah, I'm not saying he's the best keeper in the world. He may well be, and I think the voting was he was recently. But just that extra wingspan that he's got, you know, a couple of times it's just fingertips onto a post and things like that. And one certainly was lucky. Was it Alexander Arnold? I think it went through and it hit his thigh. Anyway, from the right hand side. So, you know, it was the tiniest little millimetres that were making all the difference in that one. But yes, they had shots on target. I think one or two of them with just about any other goalkeeper ends up in the net. So in the end, really unlucky. Really unlucky. Yeah,
and it almost feels like unsatisfactory analysis to bring in things like luck or a goalkeeping performance. But it's like the Mane saved the one off the post in the first half, and there was the one where Salah took that brilliant first touch and got a shot away with his right foot with plenty of power and was thumping the ground afterwards as Courtois got to it. Yeah,
you say, if you're a footballer or a football fan or anything, you look back at every one of those moments and you can say that could have changed everything. You know, it would have made it a much more interesting game to watch. I mean, it's an interesting enough game. It was a good game to watch, but you know, an early-ish goal, preferably for Liverpool, would have absolutely opened it out, and it may well have been that Liverpool will steamroll it through. But nobody's really doing that to Real Madrid. It would have opened them up a little bit. But you also have to keep on looking at Ancelotti, and he seems to find ways. He seems to see where weaknesses are. He'll see that as well, but he'll see where team strengths are and say, right, okay, then I've got some goalkeeper here. If I'll try and keep your shots from outside the box or from decent distance, or you're being closed down very, very closely while you're shooting. And at that point in time, you're almost thinking the only way they're going to score is by a deflection. Yeah. That's luck. Yeah. And I kind of felt, I really felt Liverpool deserved at least to get to extra time to see what they had in the tank and what else they could do. But, you know, someone like Diaz wasn't having his best game either. It was okay, but, you know, you need everybody to be at your best to win the Champions League games sometimes. And Liverpool weren't quite, they were still arguably the better team over the 90 with the amount of possession they had. Although I did see one stat, I can't remember, 50 or 60 minutes in, and it was 51-49 to Real Madrid. And that was shocked me. Right. It absolutely shocked me. And I was like, what, really? Because that's not the game I was seeing, but the possession that Real Madrid had was in their own half, and the possession that Liverpool had was in their half too. And
I'm sure you watch wingers closely. What was your read on Salah and Diaz, for instance?
It's really, Diaz was well played on the day generally, wasn't he? You know, and it's hard for him to come in and be absolutely brilliant every single week, but he just wasn't getting his by as often as he normally was. And you know, it's very, very tight in games like that. You sometimes have games that they flash by just too quickly, and you know you're only going to get certain amounts of good possession in good areas, and you need to make good use of them. And it wasn't poor at all, but I wasn't surprised when he was taken off. Salah, you just know what it's like. I've seen plenty of games with Salah, and it's almost sacrilege to say it. Certainly this season and bits of last season, where he was bang average for 85, 86, 87 minutes. But then you watch the 2 or 3 things he does, and you go, wow, because you've seen the highlights, you've not watched the whole game, and that's Salah. And if he did score his goal there, then it would, more again. So you have to accept that. He's had to control his energy exertions quite a lot for this season, because we have to remember what a season he's had. I mean, if there's anybody had more, it might have been you mentioned to me last week, the amount of disappointments that Mo Salah's had this season. I mean, they're crushing. And the fact that he never seems to get a rest, he's always playing in AFCON and various things, he did look a little bit wiped out.
A few times watching Real Madrid this season, I've been thinking about a few Manchester United players who spoke about the Champions League finals against Barcelona maybe a decade ago, and in effect they were just saying how difficult it was to maintain your composure and not become overly frustrated, because akin to Madrid now in the Spanish league, that Manchester United team spent the vast majority of their time having the most possession, being in charge of games, and not just having a defensive rearguard action. And so to suddenly not be able to get the ball just led to mistakes and people pushing things and then being picked apart. Considering Kroos, Modric, Benzema, Casemiro, Carvalho, Alaba, and bossing so many La Liga games, they've no problem playing like Burnley. And they don't seem to get rattled, or the humility almost is quite impressive.
Yes, I agree with that. It's funny you mentioned Burnley, and you look at Benzema and you think, target man, but his technical hold-up play was just ridiculously good. It was just stupidly good against very good defenders, as drawing people little infield balls that you're thinking, if the top players in the world that are midfielders play that ball, you're applauding them. And there's your big hulk of a centre forward doing exactly that. And you're thinking, oh, he's class, he's real quality. In a way, the only thing wrong with the game was he wasn't the guy that scored the goal, because for what he's done for Madrid this season has been fantastic. But they'll get down and dirty and they'll fight for it. And they are a slightly different team. They're a different team going back to what they were with Ronaldo playing with the team, because it was so focused around him. But he wasn't one of the ones that was going to really get down and work too hard for it the last 2 or 3 years he was at Real Madrid. But the rest of them now, it's about, I don't know, again, and everyone who was listening and watching, the amount of tackles that Modric made. I mean, Modric, in his age, the type of player he is, he made some superb tackles. You don't have to be tough as nails to make tackles. You just have to have good timing. And his timing with a lot of his tackles was absolutely fantastic until the space opened up, and then the creative genius and the calmness under pressure and the beginning to control the midfield started to show. And that does show you a real top class player who will do the ugly stuff. And then when the space opens up, right, okay, we'll turn into the Rolls Royce now after being a JCB.
Dave is texting, could you ask Pat about Thiago? Looked gone in the warm-up. Surely at that stage you should just pull him for Keita. Yeah, but I don't know if Keita's been in great form recently, and I don't know how much creatively he's going to give you either in comparison. You want creativity, and he's going to give you more than Keita's going to give you. And the other side of it is, give it a go. You've got a number of substitutions you can make. Give it a go, and if it's not working, maybe you have to make that decision a wee bit earlier than was actually made. But there are certain players, and he's been, the biggest thing we've said about Thiago this season is the way he has created space, the way he has manipulated space, the way he's cruises by a player and suddenly everything's opened up a little bit. That's what you needed against Real Madrid. Absolutely, that's what you needed more than anything else. But as you say, he wasn't really able to do it, because you're right, he wasn't 100%. So I understand it's a very good point to do it, but I keep on going back to it. We're all great in hindsight. I don't know how many people will say it at the time, really. Don't try him anyway. I would have said, try him. And then if it's not working, okay, move on and do something else. Because that's what Liverpool have got. They've got a lot of depth. Because you think of the way he's been ghosting past players of late in the Premier League and showing off and creating space against packed defences. It does speak to the worries that Liverpool management and I suppose fans and players by extension have against those packed defences. Liverpool are just not as adept at breaking down those packed defences as Manchester City.
Yes, and that's the problem. Everyone's got, and I would say Liverpool to some degree, but they've not scored. They've scored a hell of a lot of goals this season. Remember that. So they're doing okay for scoring goals. But I've watched not just them. I've watched Chelsea doing it for a long time now, like 75% of the play. But you can't break through those defences, and they've not got, the kind of, the magician who opens it up. There are different ways of doing it. You can be the Eden Hazard at his prime. You can be David Silva. Very, very different. But those players, and De Bruyne does it now, those players will open it up. Man City make it look easy, but Man City are weird. They're just not like anybody else. Other than, to some degree, Barcelona at the very best. So compare them to everyone else. Maybe they're still looking great at doing that. But getting through those defences and the packed defences and the well organised with good technical players, it's just damn hard. I remember, for years I remember it. As I'm speaking to you now, I'm remembering a game many years ago against Ireland for Scotland at Hampden Park, and we had a lot of ball in the final third, but I'll tell you what, with McGrath there, with all the players that were there, it was a hell of a hard thing to find even half a yard of space to get by them. It's quality players that are willing to do as you say, the hard work, but they're good technical markers as well.
OTB AM.
With Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating bar.